This is the work session, so things will be a little bit more informal until we begin the general business meeting. The first item on the agenda is to receive the presentation regarding nitrates in groundwater. Hello, Ross.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon.
So what we're going to do, this is the first of two presentations. So what we're going to kind of start with is just kind of look at the very big picture, kind of just do a very big brief overview of the geology and how that impacts the region generally and Winona County specifically. Going to kind of review some of our new well construction data and well construction practices. And what we are observing as far as new well construction. And then we're also going to cover pre-code well construction. And then finally kind of review the Department of Ag study, which has kind of brought up a lot of interest in the issue of nitrate and
Mr. Chair, someone in the back is going like this because they can't hear Ross. Is there
Is the microphone up, maybe not working?
It's
You have to
on.
get really close to that one.
It's on. So I need to, are you hearing me now? Okay, sorry.
Real close.
Okay. So just kind of generally we'll start very big and we'll try not to go down too many rabbit holes because there's so much detail in a lot of this. So we're going to try to keep it pretty broad. And then the next time we come along, we will be speaking more specifically to the EPA order and some of the response scenario information. So if we can have the second slide. So our bedrock formations were laid down in a giant inland sea called the Hollandale embayment. So you had varying water levels within that embayment for millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, and more technically, and depending on what the water level was in that embayment, as well as what erosion and weather practices were occurring, determined what rock formations were being washed into this embayment and how they stacked up vertically over millions of years. So if I can have the next slide, please. So this is a cross-section of the Hollandale embayment with all of the rock formations laid down. If you look at the line on the right-hand side between Fillmore and Houston County where it's showing, that kind of gives you an idea of Winona County's geology and what formations are present. The upper carbonate aquifer, we only have a very, very little bit of that aquifer or those formations present in the county. Most of that has been eroded previously or was not deposited originally. So,
But where is Winona? I'm missing.
this is at the state. This is a graphic, just kind of a USGS graphic of the state
The
line.
county doesn't exist?
It's
on that?
north. Of
It's
where the
farther
line is.
north, but you can kind of look at Houston County and the geology is very similar. So without constructing a graphic that currently doesn't exist, it's a little difficult to. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
Oh, Ross.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Can I interrupt him? Okay. So I am looking at this. I don't know, maybe you're going to go into the specific aquifers later, right?
Mhm, yes.
Okay. So I won't ask questions now,
Okay.
but what isn't there?
Yeah. So we're starting
The name
big.
changes and stuff.
Yes, there were name changes. We're going to cover that as well here too to make sure that everybody understands that. But just you'll see some of the names stay the same. Some of the names have changed over the years to reflect research, and we'll kind of cover that here in a slide that's coming up here. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a broader picture of Southeast Minnesota, and what we wanted to illustrate here is that the different colors depict groups of formations, not in individual formations. So the yellow that you see on the map are lower aquifers predominantly, with the purple showing the upper carbonates that are. So just the point that we're trying to get through here is while we're all part of Southeast Minnesota, there are distinct differences in the rock formations that are present and how that were laid down, what's been eroded. So we can't compare ourselves necessarily to other counties because there are distinct differences between the two, between all of the counties. So the other thing we wanted to illustrate with this slide is with the yellow you see up in Anoka and Asante and Carver County, those are our recharge areas for our lowest, most aquifers. So that is where the water of tomorrow is coming from. So what happens in those areas, land use practices, it's not going to reach us for thousands of years, but that will impact our water quality down the road.
All that, especially the upper, heavily metropolitan. Lots of houses, lots of roof, lots of blacktop driveways, lots of parking lots.
Yeah, the Anoka Sand Plains have a nitrate issue, and those are overlying our recharge areas. So let's go to the next slide. The last factor that kind of affected our geology of today and what we're dealing with was the glacial advances and retreats. So with Winona County, our last glacial period was the pre-Illinoisan, around 2.5 million years ago. Glaciers have a good job of, or do a good job of resetting the geology as they grind the bedrock surfaces and kind of reset karst development back. The fact that Winona County, along with some of our neighbors, did not see some of the more recent glaciation periods has allowed the karst to be more developed than it would have been had we undergone more recent glaciation. The major factor that came out of the glaciation is the amount of sediment that was deposited over the bedrock formations. And that's going to kind of be illustrated in the next slide. So let's go to that next slide, please. So karst is developed or kind of quantified by by the amount of sediment overlying it. So you have covered karst, which means you've got sediment deposits of 100 feet or more over the karst, which kind of slows down karst development. Then you have active karst where you're dealing predominantly with less than 50, and then the transition karst, which is less. So all of how much soil cover you have over karst formations can contribute to variations in the level of infiltration of contaminants, how rapidly they're able to reach the aquifers, and just kind of other impacts, as well as the development of sinkholes, how readily sinkholes are developed, which are kind of contaminant superhighways. So let's go to the next slide, please.
Wait, just a second, Rob,
Sure.
But you said earlier, the recharge area is coming from the color of the map.
For our lower aquifers. So this is pretty much a representation of our uppermost aquifer, the Prairie du Chien Jordan. So that's the Prairie du Chien, which is also, you'll see it referred to in here as Shakopee-Oneota formations. So the Prairie du Chien is a group of formations, and that is where we're seeing the most karst development and the greatest impacts of nitrate, pesticide runoff, influences from septage infiltration, things of that nature.
So how, now aren't we drilling most new wells? Aren't they being drilled lower?
They are, and I'm going to be getting to that.
Oh.
Okay.
So this area is how many feet down is this? I mean,
The Prairie du Chien.
you change the names. I'm not sure why, but
It depends on Prairie du Chien or Oneota. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Prairie du Chien, we kind of report that as generally within, because differentiating sometimes between what Shakopee bedrock or the Oneota at first bedrock. Sometimes it's difficult to estimate from the surface because everything is underground. So we have to look at road cuts, and sometimes road cuts aren't available where it actually displays those formations. So kind of generally, it gets referred to more as the Purdue sheen, where we're not specifically referring to a specific formation, because even within those formations, those are subdivided and subdivided and subdivided, and it just gets into too much terminology.
But again, I guess how many feet deep is it? How many feet down is it?
In general, for the most part of Winona County, the most common number as far as soil cover over some portion of the carbonate rocks that we have at bedrock, most typically about 30 feet. They will range up to around 50 feet in areas, with some oddball areas maybe getting higher. And
Maybe I'm
then
not clear. You're right. I know there's like 50 feet of dirt, but where's the point we reach water?
Some areas of the Prairie du Chien, there's no water in,
Right.
or what it's very localized, but it does not have a saturated level. There are other areas where the Prairie du Chien is down maybe about 150, 175 is kind of but it also varies with topography, because your water level is based on is reported based on sea level.
Sure.
So if you're at a elevation of 1,200 feet, and then you come down off the bluff a little bit and you're at 1,200 feet, well, now you're 100 feet closer to water.
Okay.
So,
And again, we have information as to the depth of wells in our area that are, perceived as problematic.
yes, in general, you're talking about something that is less than 300 feet deep on most ridgetop areas is going to be either in the Prairie du Chien, or it may be just into the Jordan Formation as well, depending on exactly where you're at.
What I was thinking is, going back to this picture,
Mhm.
you can see that it isn't flat. You
No.
can see that when it varies by topography, in
That's
certain
what-
places it bows down,
Yeah.
so it's deeper.
It does dip, but that's kind of a little bit of vertical exaggeration, trying to get a graphic on there over a great distance. It kind of exaggerates that distance, but the beds are generally slowly dipping to the west. So,
To the west in the county, yeah.
yeah.
Ross, one quick second. This is an audience check. Can the audience hear better now? Can you hear?
But we can't hear Ross very well, and we don't hear Marcia hardly at all. Really not.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Test, test, test. The light's lit.
Okay, so we'll have to talk loud.
Okay, sorry. Probably had all these maps covering up my mic, sorry. Sorry for the paperwork.
If the audience can't hear, please let us know something, because we want you to be, thank you for coming, first of all, right? This is all these are important topics. We want you to be able to hear. All right, thank you, guys. I'm sorry to interrupt.
First, my apologies, I don't relay your Chris.
I actually know who I am, so thank you, but anyway.
It's a sign we're all getting older, and don't you see numerous hearing aid commercials on the TV every night? More and more of them. Yeah.
Well,
Would you like?
Yeah,
You want me
okay.
to talk louder without the mic?
well, they can hear you, Ross. I think that's a good thing.
Yes,
You can hear me?
use the mic.
Okay. Okay, so this graphic is basically saying we've named our formations. We've already kind of talked about that a little bit. The names have changed over the years. The differences that you may see where we have some older graphics talks about the Franconia Formation. That's now called the Lone Rock Formation. The Ironton-Galesville Formation is now referred to as the Wanawak. Some of that is unifying data between states as we recognize formations, crossover state lines. Over time, when the research was done originally, they didn't know they were connected. So there's kind of been just a unification effort. So those should be the two main name changes. And since I started under the old system, I sometimes slip and use the old formation name. So we'll try to make sure I don't do that here. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. This one's kind of hard to see, but it's just it just shows us our overall stratigraphic column. I just wanted to put that up there showing the lowest most formations and the uppermost, and basically to illustrate that not every formation is present everywhere in the county. We've touched a little bit on that. The Cummingsville that is noted on the top is only present in a very small area of southwestern Winona County in northern Saratoga, southern St. Charles Township. But this stratigraphic column is kind of depicted or depicts what the bedrock map looks like as far as what formation is at first bedrock. And if we can have the next slide, it'll just show you kind of a depiction of that.
So I'm sorry, go back. I mean, you really got a lot of data here, but I don't understand it. So, I mean, the line that looks like a polygraph, you know, you're lying, you're telling the truth on the side. What is that trying to depict? The squiggle line on the right side of the picture?
That's average gamma log. So I wouldn't, it's not really anything you need to worry about. But each bedrock formation has a gamma signature, which is a kind of a measure of radioactivity. And certain rock formations have a certain signature. So I believe that one is depicting an average gamma. So. But it's mostly just to show you this, the entire stratigraphic column and how they are layered, and that some have been eroded and are not present everywhere within the county.
Yes.
So, of note, primarily on this slide, the Perdishine also, it's shown on here as the Shakopee and Oneota formations or Oneota dolomite. The darker blue portion in the western part of the county is the carbonate bedrock that is encountered in that area. It does have a higher sinkhole density than the Oneota by a certain degree, so it's a little more subject to karst development than the Oneota. But these are the two formations where, when they contain water and combined with pre-code well construction, is where you're seeing your primary nitrate contamination as well as pesticide detections.
Ignorance. Okay, so the earth is still shifting and moving all the time. So is our quote karstiology improving or getting worse or changing?
We're in a fairly stable phase. There was a failed rift going through Minnesota many years ago, where the continent was going to split apart, and that stopped. So we do have faults in the county that are known. There are earthquakes periodically, but they're such low level that it really is not having an appreciable effect on anything that's occurring with us today.
Have existed millions of years. It hasn't significantly changed.
It has not significantly changed. So other than the dissolution of the karst, as karst continues to develop, the gaps, cracks, crevices within that formation continue to enlarge, which allows more rapid infiltration of contaminants dens. So there's in that sense, but as far as the formations as a whole, are they changing or altering or compressing? Other than some erosion and just some dissolution of the rock,
It's almost like the cracks in a foundation of a building or a house.
getting a little wider, but it's a very, very slow process.
Crack in my sheetrock over the winter because something shifted. I mean, it's just okay.
Okay. The other factor to note here is all the incisive valleys throughout the county. Those drain the uplands. So when you have all the Whitewater Valley, the valleys that are feeding the Root, those have the effect of draining water away from those formations where the valleys cut through the aquifers are present in that area. So that can affect water locally, and it can affect groundwater movement. So just kind of a general indication here. But let's go ahead and move to the next slide. This is kind of a depiction of both code and non-code well construction through 2011. It comes from the Minnesota Well Index, as well as some of our own data. I put this slide up there basically to kind of show you some of the patterns. As you can notice, each dot represents a well drawing its water supply from a specific formation. And what you can see is the where you are in the county will often dictate where you're going to derive your water supply from. So you'll notice that certain formations are more prevalent in certain areas, and the use of the Prairie du Chien Jordan, as you move into the eastern part of the county, that aquifer is not viable. New well construction cannot be constructed because it can't meet the requirements that state well code has due to limited water or no water. So let's go to the next slide. So just some general statements. Again, general statements because there are exceptions to virtually everything, but wells typically were drilled to the shallowest aquifer available in the early days before there was a well code. So wherever they could find enough water to get by, they stopped drilling. The casing was either driven to bedrock and then drilled, or if the soil would stay open, they would drill a hole down, insert the casing, and then drill out through the casing into the formation that they were going to derive their water supply from. That process does not do a good job of sealing the casing to what you're going through, and that can allow contamination to migrate into the lower levels, so that the well actually becomes the source of contamination you're monitoring. So you have to be very careful when you're doing groundwater studies that your well, if you're going to try to say stuff about aquifers, that you're not using a sampling site that could actually be giving you false indications. So you need to always have an understanding of what your sampling point is.
If I understand this right, so I understand that it's a St. Peter and the Prairie du Chien, but the St. Peter particularly that it tend to have the higher nitrate levels.
The
right?
Jordan.
The Jordan.
Or the St. Peter is dewatered basically everywhere in the county. It's only maybe in the Troy area. Will you get the odd well that can still derive enough water from the
So
from
let's
the
say
St.
that it's
Peter.
the Jordan, and the Jordan has a high level of nitrates because it's got more sinkholes and it's not as deep, right? So that what you're saying is even if you drilled your well down to the Lone Rock or the Wanawak, which are deeper and not contaminated, if you did not have a casing that was sealed and the water has to come up from one of those deeper aquifers through the Jordan and is open in the column of water, it can get contaminated.
You're going to impact the water quality of whatever formation you are drilling into.
So even if you have a deeper well, if it isn't sealed properly.
Right.
the
And that is
higher
what the well
level-
code is all about.
Yep,
So
okay.
it prescribes that, and I do have some slides coming up to show that here.
Okay, you put it in yellow. The number of pre-code wells far exceed code construction
Right.
water wells.
Right.
So when did Winona County start requiring licenses or permits or whatever to drill wells?
The state put in requirements in 1974 is when they adopted the state the state well code.
Okay.
Winona County started enforcing those provisions in February of 1989.
89. So how many have we drilled since 1989?
Right now, totally in about 1900 or 1935. So, but those also include commercial industrial irrigation
1,935?
Yeah.
Okay,
total.
total of with the new standard.
Yeah, as of yesterday.
Okay, and how many total wells do we have in Winona County?
We don't know.
We don't know.
It's an estimate. So we have about 4,800 entries into the county well index, but some of those are monitoring wells, some of those, so it's having to filter all that information down. It's kind of, there's a moving target.
If
So
as a rural landowner, if you've never had your well tested or a problem with it, it probably isn't on anybody's.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
So, Ross, you referred to the county well index, which is different than the states, and ours has more wells in it than what the
well,
state.
no, the original application that was developed was given to each county, where each county had its own data. So jointly every county had its data. The state eventually put that onto an internet application called the Minnesota Well Index, and now that is, so they renamed that. So instead of Winona County only having its data and Houston having it, now every county in the state is depicted on the Minnesota Well Index. You can access well information.
And the report that came from the state, the work plan indicated that 30%, they said we don't know about 30% of the wells. Would you say that's about right in Winona County? Is it higher? Do you think it's lower?
Coming up next time, there'll be a graphic that Sheila will be presenting. I started to try to do an assessment of areas of development that we do not have well information on, that may or may not have a well. And I did kind of the western third of the county because it was the lightest and it had the least well information, or, the most up-to-date well information. And I got a little over 600 sites that I had identified that we have no well information to, that may or may not have a water supply. So that's not saying there's 600 wells right there, but visually it shows signs of development. So there could potentially be quite a number of wells out there that we just simply don't know about. There's a little bit of concern with the government knowing about people's wells. So it's generally not easily shared information. So,
Well, okay. Thanks.
so
For the county board and for Ross's sake, it's almost 5:30. What time should we, and I want to give you all the time that you need, that we should probably leave at least 5-10 minutes for the second item, correct?
Absolutely.
So then we, as county commissioners, may want to hold off on the questions a little bit until either afterwards or part two. Only.
I was going to ask you that question
To
here.
allow
'Cause
you to get
I was
through
going
the
to try to get it in about 25 minutes, but
Yep. Nope.
with
Yeah,
questions, that's not.
These
gonna
are all good
happen.
questions. Nope.
No, that's-
Just save them. Save them for next.
Okay. Okay. We've already talked about wells that were not grouted, so we can move on to the next slide here. Generally, ridge construction across the county, carbonate bedrock is at first bedrock. The development of sinkholes provide pathways for contaminants to enter, as does just the nature of the bedrock underlying all the ground surface. So while there may be areas that have high levels or contribute high levels of contamination, there is a baseline level of contamination happening just by the general nature of that bedrock. It's fractured. There are solution channels. So anything we do on land surface, anything that we are discharging, is going to have a fairly easy pathway to enter the groundwater system. So the valley floor and alluvial aquifer wells in the county, quite often those wells meet current standards for construction because the construction methods have not changed. So what was done in the past is what we're still doing now under the state well code, but many of the installations did not meet have to abide by any isolation distance between a source contamination. So some of those wells are being impacted because they just did not allow enough separation between a source contamination and where the well was installed. The last type of well that I I refer to as a valley side hill well, which would be the transitional wells. And we see residential construction all through the rural. That's not on the very bottom of the valley, but is kind of off to the side. How far you go up the hillside is going to affect how soon you encounter bedrock. And that in turn, because of that, if with pre-code construction, those wells were not grouted in. So the shallower the bedrock, the more likely you're going to see impacts in your water supply for that type of well. The farther down you come towards the valley floor, you will actually see a better water quality, generally speaking. Let's go to the next slide. As far as factors affecting new construction, when someone is getting ready to drill a new well, they start talking with their well driller about what aquifers are available. Not every aquifer, we've already talked about, not every aquifer is available throughout the county. The Prairie du Chien is actually, use of the Prairie du Chien is actually banned in most areas of the Winona County. You are not allowed to construct a new well into it. There's only that small area that I'll show you upcoming here in a graphic.
Whose rule is that?
That is the state's well code rule. So, and that is primarily due to the fact that the formation is susceptible to bacterial and viral contamination. And it's due to, it is very susceptible to rapid fluctuations in water quality. So regardless of nitrate or pesticide contamination, I don't see the state ever changing that requirement. So any perspective about recovering the Prairie du Chien for usage for new well construction is at this point is not an option. So from there, the well owner will talk to the contractor about how much water they want. Different aquifers yield different amounts of water, so they will work with the driller to get the amount of water that they need for their purposes, and then sometimes you will change aquifers based on that information. We already somewhat talked about regulatory requirements, what formations are banned. The other biggest factor is well cost. That drives the vast majority of the decisions on well construction. How much money do you have to spend? Before the pandemic, the average wedge well was in the 20 to 30,000 range complete. With the implementation of the new lead-free brass rule, along with just some of the inflationary prices on well casing, copper wire, drop pipe, all the components that go into a well, now we're pushing 30 to 40,000 for probably the average ridge well. And if you get into more of a high capacity irrigation well, you're in the 60 to 70,000 range. The last factor that comes into play is I have it up here as dissolved minerals, but usually that refers to dissolved iron and the problems aesthetically, as well as just with laundry, things of that nature. Some people are more sensitive to that, are unwilling to treat water from a new supply. If they want, some people want to avoid that, so they will choose a shallower formation or something that may have less iron in it if they don't want to take the risk of maybe having to put in an iron removal system or water softener to deal with dissolved minerals. Let's go to the next slide. This is a graphic from our 84 Atlas showing approved and unapproved methods of well construction. Kind of, we've already touched on a little bit about multi-aquifer wells. The Prairie du Chien in the Jordan Aquifer is treated as an aquifer system, as is the Franconia, now called the Lone Rock, and the Ironton Galesville, which is now called the Wanawak. Those two are an aquifer system, and then the Mount Simon is our lowest, most aquifer. Interconnecting any of those water, aquifer systems is not allowed under state well code. Within the Jordan Formation, we do see stratification of nitrate. We'll get to some summary of the water quality data for the new well construction here in just a little bit, but what you will note is that we are able to find background level nitrate levels are below detection limit nitrate level in a lot of Jordan construction simply by making sure we case deep enough into the formation and grout the well to the surface, and we can still find good water quality within the Jordan in a lot of areas. As long as we pay attention to what we're doing. If you just go in, the bare minimum, the state well code requires that a Jordan well be at least, the casing go at least 10 feet into the formation, and that the static water level stay inside the casing. So the kind of depicted on the graphic, you'll notice a water level. That's referred to as the static water level, and that water level has to stay inside the casing, and that is a protection against bacteria and viruses and the ability of those to maybe migrate from the Prairie du Chien into the Jordan. So while the well code lets you go to a minimum of just being inside the Jordan, the deeper you go into that formation, you will improve water quality. I think that is enough for that slide. Let's move on to the next one. This is another graphic from the 84 Atlas to illustrate here. I've made reference to sand and gravel or alluvial aquifers. On the left graphic, the depiction closest to the center shows an alluvial type well where casing is driven into a sand and gravel aquifer. A screen is dropped down into the well, and then the casing is bumped back, exposing the screen, allowing water to flow into the well borehole. Alluvial aquifers can be very susceptible to nitrate infiltration, along with other chemical contaminants. So water quality can be more highly variable in that. So just to kind of summarize, the Prairie du Chien Jordan and the alluvial aquifers are our most susceptible aquifers. Let's go ahead and move on to the next screen. So this just summarizes well construction within the county since we took over the program. You will notice kind of trends in certain formations in certain townships, and a lot of that goes into what aquifers are present, what the water quality is, and the well drillers have their preferences, and that is how they will steer their clients to achieve the best possible result. Alluvial aquifers are not present everywhere, so you'll notice those depicted in higher numbers in those townships that have more availability of that type of well construction. As we getting a drink here, but in Saratoga and St. Charles Township, we talked about. You will note that those are the only townships where new construction into the Prairie du Chien shows up in our numbers, because that's the only place that those wells can be legally constructed. Also, geographically, you'll notice that Jordan wells are more limited to townships in the western part of the county, and Wanawak wells more towards the center or eastern part of the county. Again, the depth at which you encounter those formations drive up cost, so those formations may be avoided simply because they can derive a water supply from a shallower aquifer with adequate water quality. So let's move on to the next slide.
Give you a time check, about 10 more minutes. I apologize.
Yeah. We may have to bump some of this into the next meeting. So this just shows just a quick graphic of where in Winona County you can complete in the Prairie du Chien. The inside line is the line that denotes where the installation of a Prairie du Chien well is legal. The outer line shows an area that I negotiated with the State Health Department earlier in 2023, kind of as a possibility to allow homeowners to completing the Purdue Sheen that does not meet the strict interpretation of the well code, but there is a provision that allows that to happen. In doing so, it can save the well owner hundreds of feet in well construction and being able to derive a water supply and a safe water source without and not encounter high iron by drilling into the Jordan Formation at a much deeper depth. So let's move on to the next one. So this is a summary of our new well construction water test data, basically addressing nitrate. I broke it down by decades and number of wells in the formation. What you will note in the Jordan well numbers, I have it broken down by not detected in less than one. Now, some of that is due to the fact that the how laboratories reported data changed between the 1990s and the 2000s. So labs used to report very low levels that were below the accuracy level of the equipment. So it just in depicting that information. So really those first two columns can be combined as reflective of the overall water quality that we're seeing in new well construction. So kind of to summarize that, while we do see some mid-range nitrate areas, a lot of that is site-specific due to choices made with the well construction at those sites. The vast majority of well construction, we have a notation on the bottom of the 1,696 wells that we have water quality test data for. 1,330 of them were basically below detection limit. So we can achieve good water quality with new construction.
That's for a question, but if I'm asking, so the left axis there, that's going deeper. The print
Correct.
machine is, and it's just all is going deeper.
Correct.
Okay, so I understood.
With the exception of the alluvial, which is kind of the oddball. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. We'll start into the Department of Ag testing, and hopefully maybe I can get through this. The Department of Ag got quite a bit of attention when they released their nitrate testing results. The goal of the testing was to identify high nitrate, and if you read the last sentence, in areas where we already knew it was. So the main point of this is not a new issue. While it's being kind of talked about in a refreshed capacity, we've known about this for a very long time. There are many, many different agencies that have been trying to work and find ways to reduce the amount of nitrate contamination in the groundwater, but there are barriers to how do we do that when some of it is just an inherent conflict between agricultural practices and a susceptible bedrock. So you have kind of an incompatibility there that is not easily solved. It's not necessarily that people are being irresponsible. It's just the bedrock is just that susceptible. So let's go on to the next slide. The township testing program did a very good job of telling us what people have access to as their drinking water supply. And that's the biggest takeaway from this, is that it gives us a good picture of what's available out there and the barriers that, there are people who have very high nitrate water. The reason they do it quite often just simply comes down to the cost of replacing their wells. Or treating their wells. Even treatment is fairly expensive. It documented the level of nitrate impact in susceptible areas very effectively, and it raised a lot of awareness and motivated people to test their water supplies. We can go to the next slide, please. What it did not do is characterize our aquifers. It provides us with information, but it is site-specific information. You have to take every water test in the context of that particular installation. It is trying to generalize or group, unlike wells, just blurs what blurs the water quality issues and what we need to do about them. While there are commonalities, there are also definitely differences. And that kind of got lost, I think, in trying to demonstrate what the Department of Ag was trying to do. There was information that could have been better presented, that could have been used to interpretation. I have many questions where it's like, as you're flipping through the report, well, where's this information? Is it in this? Because there are so many tables and so, within the entire report, there's data that got lost and that the Department of Ag is not willing to share. Now, whether that's due to a data practices issue or what, but the other counties have requested the detailed data and been refused.
But I'm sorry, I feel conflicted here and I hate to take time, but you just gave us this chart that I asked about the depth of wells. Now, this is Winona County and I see very, very few that are over
New
1 to
construction,
3.
new
This
construction.
is just new construction.
Right, so that data is not reflective of all wells. That
Okay.
shows us what is available.
Okay, so if you got a newly constructed, it's.
If
very
you can,
minimal.
if you plan, if you have the money for a new well, you can definitely achieve good water quality results.
Okay, all right.
Right.
Ross, just a quick question. It's not related to nitrates, but when I was the water operator in Rolling Stone for, I have my state license out there. The static water level each year when we tested it was continuing to drop. And then when I do the drawdown test, my drawdown was getting lower. So it wasn't recharging as fast. And it was the water level in the aquifer was dropping.
Use was exceeding recharge. So if you use water faster than it was
But the
resupplied, then that's
static
what
water
happens.
level after hours of not use was continuing to go lower. So the aquifer itself,
There can be specifics within the well, but during periods of drought, the static water levels will drop, and sometimes they will rebound after the recharge comes in.
so we're not
Yeah.
seeing a problem with
I think what I'm getting.
all the water in our aquifers.
No, we have a ton of water. So
So
it's
the
not,
recharge level.
yeah, we're not talking about any type of critical. I think we have, 3% of the fresh groundwater supply in the US, just in southeast Minnesota and in Wisconsin, so.
And to your point, Commissioner Ward, earlier Ross told us that he thought we had 4,800 wells in total. And a number we don't know about, right?
Right,
So something more than 5,000 probably. But the new ones, the 1,900,
Yeah.
they are,
Good.
their nitrate levels look really good. But when he says the number of wells, the older wells, they far outweigh the number of new wells. So we have 3,000 some wells that potentially are contaminated because they were not done to the well code. So that's a big deal to me.
just,
Yeah.
We don't know.
I guess
Don't
we're
know
in
the
we're
unknown.
probably in the 8,000 to 9,000 range somewhere. It's just,
8,000 to
but that's,
9,000.
yeah, that's a scientific wild guess. So, but it would not surprise
I
me.
mean, old farmsteads are old farmsteads. I mean.
Yeah, there's a
okay,
lot of
we
stuff
can-
out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can agree to
Yeah,
disagree
let's-
on
But
that.
there's a lot of wells that potentially are contaminated. We know that the well code works.
Well, when we had 1 per 40, we didn't allow a lot of building out in the county. So I mean, there wasn't an explosion of population and new wells. I'm sorry.
Let's go ahead to the next slide here, and I can try to wrap this up here. There was some confusion created by aggregating all the water samples together. So if you try to look at their statistical data, and we'll just flip through a couple of charts quickly here, I'm not going to go into detail. The ability for people to understand all the statistics that were calculated is not necessarily compatible. So sometimes people would seize on numbers that send the wrong message. And that was one of my criticism. This was over statisticalized. So I have that as the last one there. And then the only other issue that we've already kind of talked about is point source versus non-point source. When you're sampling a well that is improperly constructed, it is a point source for pollution because it is seeing impacts from the surface based on just the nature. Now, the state was trying to prove that as part of their study, but it's just inherent to the geology. It's something that should just be accepted because, you know, trying to prove that if you only use code deep well constructed wells as your sampling points, you're not going to find the nitrate. So you have no choice but to use the non-code wells that are shallow to sample, and those are introducing contamination. So some of it could be related to what you're trying to prove, and some of it may not be. So they really just have no other options. So I think they over-focused on that, and it's just inherent to it is they were trying to prove something that is impossible to prove with the system we have. So let's go ahead and flip to the next slide. This is just a quick graphic showing point source. Non-point source would be where you see the red all the way across the entire field. So that just kind of, just in case there was any question about what point source and non-point source pollution is. Point source is one specific area. Non-point source is a much broader region that is all contributing to the overall impacts of whatever is occurring. So let's flip to the next slide. And this is just a quick graphic of kind of the initial data set. We had 940 wells. You've got every percentile calculated. You've got every average, mean and medium calculated, which is kind of meaningless to most people. Trying to decipher what that information is can be daunting and can end up with the wrong message being sent. Let's go to the next slide here. The biggest thing on the bottom left hand, you'll see 738 wells under the non-available. That is the number of wells that were sampled by Department of Ag for wells that they had absolutely no information on. So without understanding aquifer, without understanding geologic setting, where I talked about valley, side hill, valley, ridge, where are you at? Those details matter. They help paint a picture of what potentially is. So then you have to go back to the value of this just shows what people are drinking.
So the 738, the testing, the data of where what aquifer and the information about the well and how deep the well was or what aquifer the well.
It was
that's
unknown.
not
They didn't know.
Yeah.
They wasn't reported. And the other factor on towards the right and the bottom, you'll see in the non-available in total, 164 of the 180 wells that tested over 10 also had no information on them,
Sure.
which tells us they're in all likelihood they're pre-code wells in the shallow carbonate aquifer. So, but there's no information. So the vast majority of the wells with the worst water quality are exactly where we would expect them to be. So let's just flip to the next slide here quick. I think we can probably skip these others. Let's go ahead and move to, this just restates what I just talked about. Let's go ahead and move to there. They had a final data set where you'll notice that you refer back to the charts. The initial data set, if you go to the greater than 10 total wells at the very bottom right-hand corner, is 7.1 here, and that is down from 19.1 in the initially reported data. And let's flip to this last slide here. This is the reason that they eliminated 209 wells from the study. And basically what they did is some of the higher nitrate wells, they eliminated from the study because on the left-hand side, they recognize 36 of them are point source pollution. If you look at the 121 at the bottom, you could probably move all of those over into the point source pollution, so that impacted the overall statistics. But the initial statistics that were reported is what got the attention, not the final report. It mostly comes down to messaging. What message are you trying to communicate? And the important part of the study is there's a lot of wells out there with a lot of poor water quality, without question. Trying to quantify or demonstrate or whatever. That's really the takeaway from all of this is, if you have the money to drill a new well, you can get a safe water supply in Winona County, but not everybody is that lucky, and they are forced to accept or manage what they have. So I talk with people every day about, well, if you can't afford a new well, here are your options: water treatment, buying bottled water for drinking or cooking. Managing risk is really what it comes down to. And I've done that for the last 35 years on a case by case basis. And that's really all we can do unless we can find this source of money that will help people improve their situation. So that is kind of what the initiative that is rolling forward. It coincides with the EPA order that we're going to talk about a little more the next time, but I should let you move on to your next one here. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Ross.
you, Ross.
Thank you.
So thank you. Let's get Ross on with that. And the next steps are to have part 2, Sheila, at the next meeting or a month from now? Month from now. So members of I want to make sure the members of the public know. And there were extra copies, hard copies of this. And is this online now, Ross? Can people access this information?
You can read it.
Thank you so much. Anything else, commissioners?
Just a question for Sheila. Will you have water treatment in part of your presentation?
What I was going to do for the next presentation, basically, I just wanted to, Ross did a very good job of setting the stage for what's the state of water quality in Winona now. And he did mention, I should get closer. He did mention that there was, this is nothing new. We've known about this for decades, that there are nitrates in the groundwater. And so what I was going to do was review what the state agencies and the local entities are doing, have been doing before the EPA petition. I'm going to briefly give a timeline of what led to the EPA petition, and then what the proposals are, as well as a legislative update of what's going on at that time. I know it's kind of been crazy this past week with all of this there. Is that what we are looking
One of the biggest
for?
complaints I hear is that the federal and state government is moving slow. And I think we have an opportunity. I know Soil and Water is working on more testing equipment.
Yep.
I don't know if they've obtained that. I know the Whitewater Group was working on that. And again, treatment.
Right.
Ross alluded, a reverse osmosis system with low cost
Right.
is a great resource that I don't think we
Definitely.
tell people enough about
Right.
in our education process of what they can do.
And that was
And I don't think
included.
it doesn't take $40,000 to drill a new well. It's a
Exactly.
couple thousand
Yes.
dollars.
And that was included in some of the proposals that the legislature was considering. And we'll see how that all pans out. But I know the one grant that Winona was a partner in, it included 6 counties at the time, was the Tap In Collaborative.
Yep.
And I know that was considered in the proposals, but then to be expanded, I think, to 9 counties, and also to expand beyond just nitrates. But that did include some RO systems, but I didn't know how far it's going to go. But so that was the intent, was that would kind of bridge the gap before other funding was available.
Well, I think
So-
maybe Winona County can step up and do more in a more prominent shorter time frame than waiting for the feds and the states if we have people that are at a very high risk. So again, we can talk about that more, but I
Okay.
don't think we should.
But yes, I can certainly talk about RO
I think we could
systems.
find a couple $1,000s to create a cost share, basis program through Soil and Water. Somebody-
Is there anything else that the board wants to hear at part 2 that I should consider adding?
Follow up with you.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Thank you so much, Sheila.
Thank
And
you.
if we can't do it in the context of a normal board meeting, maybe we could have a special study session where we could have just more time for just this issue. I feel bad that we rushed Ross and we just rushed Sheila as well, but let's go with the existing plan, and if need be, we can maybe have a special study session.
Oh, that would be full hour.
Yeah,
Awesome. Great.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So
Come up with some money.
We have less than a minute. So can we bump that last item until next?
No, I'm ready. I mean, and you really need to move on. We moved it from the last meeting.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, or at least give you something to
Sure.
think
Yep.
about. All right, what I referring to in our county ground rules, and it's referred to in section 8 of our county under, I think it's procedures. I had it written down. But anyway, number 8, policy decisions shall not be revisited for 1-year period unless the situation or circumstances change substantially and a 4/5 majority of the county board agrees to reopen the policy for discussion. Ms. Holte provided me with, going back, I'm not questioning the time. It's a little questionable because we've bounced this around for several years as to regulating the dog breeding facilities to a higher level, which I don't support. I think it has no rational basis to start with. But out of the 7 votes that were taken from August 23rd, 2022 to the most recent one was February 13th, 2024, there were 7 separate votes on the topic and not one was a 4/5 vote. So if our policy says, and it says and, it doesn't say or it doesn't say maybe or if, it says and a 4/5 majority of the county board agrees to reopen the policy. So I'm just wondering if we're going to follow our policy or if we're not going to follow our policy.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah. So to my understanding, the rule that you are speaking about, Commissioner Ward, applies to the policy, which is the 3-page document that's in there. And those policies relate to meeting decorum, agendas, role of the chairperson, management, goals, and it would not be true that every zoning ordinance change requires a 4/5 vote, or we would never get anything done.
Well, it should because it's zoning. Zoning is a
That
very,
is not that is not how it works.
that's a matter of interpretation.
Those,
I have had-
that 4/5 rule, that applies to these policies.
Frivolous ground rule policies.
They're not
No,
frivolous in my
I
mind.
I have consulted several attorneys and I've asked them, read this. And I've explained to them not in great detail, but I've asked them, what's your interpretation? And I've had numerous attorney and legal people say that to reopen a policy, land use zoning, that's a major policy, a big policy. And so to change a big land use policy, we put in there, and again, it says 4/5. So their interpretation, along with mine, is that we need 4/5 vote to reopen any policy, not just these ground rule policies. It's any policy that the county board has. So again, do you want to follow? Again, I'm looking for, obviously you have a different interpretation. The rest of the board members, and I know Commissioner Elsing is not here tonight. So we can't even have a 4/5 vote because Commissioner Elsing isn't here. But,
Can we table it till the next meeting?
well, I'd like some discussion. Where are we going with this? We're allowing staff, or not we're allowing, we're requiring staff to spend a lot of time on this issue. And if we're going to follow our policy the way I interpret it, that it has to be 4/5 of the county board that wants to change it, unless we're going to change the whole zoning ordinance or the comprehensive land use plan, which is scheduled for sometime in the future, that we shouldn't even be discussing it. We're asking staff to spend a lot of time on an issue. Again, in my opinion, and others that I've asked, if we don't have a 4/5 majority to reopen that particular policy, we shouldn't be asking staff to rewrite it and rework on it.
Real quickly, my understanding is what Commissioner Meyer said. It's the Winona County ground rules. That's the policy that's being referred to, not every policy countywide. So that's my understanding.
Yeah, I would also point to the table of motions that we have also in the packet that tells what our interpretation and how we apply Robert's Rules of Order. And so for only a very few things, to limit or extend debate or to call the previous question is a 2/3 majority required. So our interpretation of the Robert's Rules of Order does not require four votes for every decision that we make. So.
And I'm not saying it does, but again, we put it in here and it says policy decisions. It doesn't say board ground rules or anything like that. It says policy decisions.
Can we come, Chris Olson, do you want to jump in or?
No,
Okay, I don't want to, can we continue only because we're only 5 minutes into the general business meeting?
Okay, well, it's on the record. If you don't want to follow policy, I guess we're policy breakers, so. We can come back to it, absolutely, because I think it needs clarity. Because I think we're doing a disservice to staff and we're doing a disservice to our public.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. So,
I had written the policy, decorum policy, when I first became county attorney back in 2011. This has been changed since.
Mhm.
But I would suggest to the board if Commissioner Ward has consulted with other attorneys and not me.
I did. I sent you an email several
Well,
months ago about this.
but-
I can find it.
Okay,
You've
you
been
can find
busy.
it, but
You've
I
been
don't
busy.
think I responded.
No, you did not.
Yeah, so,
Yes, I
I would
acknowledge that.
suggest that you ask your county attorney for a review and opinion on this because, I mean, I don't want to get into it tonight, obviously, but there are certain interpretations that apply here, so.
okay, thank you. Does the board need a break or can we continue right on?
Can we take a 2-minute break?
Okay, we will
Yeah.
conclude the committee of the board, the work session, and we'll reconvene in 2 minutes with the general business meeting.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Good evening.
I apologize that we're running a little bit late. Important matters to discuss. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone who is either present in person or online that would like to address the county board? Lynn?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first time I've been back for 13 years,
Welcome back.
Good to see you.
and I'm very pleased to be here. I want to first say that I'm very pleased with the presentation that Ross Dunsmore made. And I too was certified in Wells. He didn't miss a trick. Good job, Ross. I also know he's got my interim job. Good luck with that annual report. But more importantly, those statistics tell you very, very clearly, you don't need to study anything more to educate the public. And I thank Commissioner Ward for bringing that up. I'm going to wait to hear Sheila. But heaven's sakes, 30 years I worked for that. And we had a plan to educate every pregnant woman who lived in a private well. That system is still available. There's help for persons who don't have the advantage of private money. This is a county that still has 20% of our children under the age of 5 needing food, assistance, housing. And I rejoiced the day that we started to feed them breakfast and lunch at school, and that all children were treated equally. My grandchildren had that advantage from their very wealthy family in the Twin Cities their entire lives, from preschool. And the last one will graduate soon. Why do we not realize raising our children on clean water, clean air, and good food builds their brain? This is the same body
Good job.
that is
10 seconds.
10 seconds, same group of people that needs to continue to act positively for the future. So I thank you, and there's others who want to speak. And I'll be back in April. Thank
Keep
you.
on coming back, please.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I do want to talk about
Sorry, name and address.
Kelly Stanage, 31, got my address. 31775 Highway 76. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about what we refer to here as safe water. With regard to nitrates, what we're referring to is 10 parts per million. That is the level at which a baby can get above which a baby can succumb to blue baby syndrome, a very serious disease that they can die from. However, many studies have been done, one that shows bladder, ovarian, and thyroid cancers occurring at levels of 5 parts per million, half of what we call safe, and colorectal cancer occurring at 3.87 parts per million. And a study was done by the University of Illinois, Chicago, analyzing birth records in Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, and Missouri, finding that at levels of 1 part per million, there's a higher incidence of birth defects, low birth weights, and premature births. So if we're thinking that 10 parts per million is safe, we really ought to be thinking otherwise. This is a very serious problem, not only for the health of babies, pregnant mothers, and all of the rest of us, and 10 parts per million is not safe. It's urgent. We need to do something about it. Drilling deeper wells and treating our water is not the answer. We need to change our land use practices, and we need to do it really quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my apologies. As people come up to speak, if you could mention your name and your address, unless you're a county staff person, in which case you could just identify yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caroline Van Shake, 40002 Wolfhill Drive, La Crescent, which is near, our house is actually near New Hartford. I want to build on both Ross Dunsmore's presentation and also Marcia, you're really welcome comment about doing something sooner than later in Winona County. So I'm going to give you a couple of statistics here. And if you want sources, I'm happy to provide them later. So, God, I hate sitting up here. I wish we could all just sit in a circle together. Okay. All right. So here's some numbers for you from a not numbers person. It is poignant to note that there have in the state of Minnesota been steady sales in fertilizer since 1989, which correlates very directly with the trend upward with Utica's well in nitrates and chloride, which started statistically, according to the Minnesota Geological Survey, in 1989, 1990. And if you're wondering if all of that fertilizer got actually applied, it did. The National Ag Stats in Minnesota says in its latest numbers that 98% of planted corn received nitrogen and 97% of planted corn received herbicides. So it's being bought and sold and applied in the state of Minnesota. So it follows that when NRCS put out its subsurface report a year ago, March of last year, it found a 13% increase in what they call subsurface nitrogen loss. It also follows then that, let me skip that part, that the MPCA, the Pollution Control Agency, by its own data, find that 70% of water contamination in our state is from agriculture. And PCA and the MDA say by their own research that 89 to 95% of nitrate contamination is from crops. So
Caroline, I apologize. 10 more seconds, please.
yes, okay. So I want to say in no uncertain terms that nitrate contamination is real, that as Ross showed us, karst and the 1,500 sinkholes that we have in Winona County are real. And it's all tied to agriculture. And we have in our comp plan a great deal of information about agriculture. And I'm also asking for not only mitigation attention, but agricultural land use attention. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I speak?
Is there anyone else who would like to address the county board, either in person or online? Ms. Lavala here.
Good evening. Jennifer Lavala, Winona County Sheriff's Office Dispatch Supervisor. With me, I have Public Safety Dispatcher Paige Daly. It's my honor this evening to notify the County Board that Winona County Sheriff's Office Dispatcher Paige Daly received the Minnesota Sheriff's Association AppConina Make a Difference Award at last week's award banquet. Purpose of this award is to recognize public safety telecommunicators who went above and beyond the scope of their day-to-day job duties during an unforeseen or unusually challenging event. In the early morning hours of August 10th last year, Paige was working in the Winona County Communications Center when she noticed that her only partner in the dispatch center was unresponsive and slumped in his chair at his console. Not only a dedicated public safety dispatcher, but also a trained medical first responder, Paige leapt into action. While working alone in the center, Paige radioed jail staff, Mike Stanton and Amanda Gillespie, to assist with getting her partner to the floor so that they could begin chest compressions. Remaining calm and collected, Paige began the unthinkable, starting medical personnel to the communication center for one of our own. Masterfully, Paige coordinated the response necessary to save her partner's life, all while continuing to process calls from the public and from responders in the field. Sorry, I'm just so proud of her. And her ability to remain composed, decisive, and effective under such intense pressure is a testament to her professionalism and dedication. Paige is here with me today, and I would like you to join me in thanking her for her extraordinary efforts and to, with me, congratulate her on this award.
Does Paige have anything to say? Does Paige have anything to say?
As Jennifer Lavala said, I'm Paige Daly. I'm a public safety telecommunicator with Winona County. I've been with Winona County for about a year and a half, and I just want to, again, recognize the Winona County jail staff that stepped forward that night and the deputies, Winona Area Ambulance Service that responded, the fire department, the Winona Police Department, and all of their assisting agencies. It was a team effort.
Thank you, Paige. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff Cameron.
So I'm sorry, Sheriff Danner, okay, you said chest compressions, but I know there's all kinds of equipment now that does that. Do we have that at the automated? Yeah, yes.
We do not have Lucas for chest compressions within the building. However, there are certain ambulance services throughout the county that do utilize that type of equipment to provide automated chest compressions at the appropriate rate.
But maybe we should look at having one, if we have guests in our facility, maybe we should look at having our own instead of waiting for
And we
them.
have AEDs. and
Okay, all right.
The nice thing is Winona Area Ambulance is a block away.
As a block away. Well, sometimes a block is a long, okay.
Be a
I
very
mean, if
long
you feel-
time,
If you
especially when
feel
you,
it's, if you feel, because I know I've been to some of our volunteer groups and they're very complimentary of the equipment that we've been able to provide them through the Southeast Emergency Communication, group and everything. So, okay, if you feel like we got it covered,
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
good,
thank you.
Thank you
Good.
again, Paige.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Hello?
much.
thank you.
Is there anybody
Hello?
else who would like to address the county board, either in person
Hello?
or online?
Hello? Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Is there anybody else?
Yes, right here. Can you
Wendy, are
hear
you coming
me?
forward or are you just standing up? Okay.
It's okay.
Is there
Anybody
any-
online?
is there anybody online that would like to address the county board? There is.
Hear her.
Okay. So there is somebody online, but we're having technical issues.
Where do you see them?
You want to just come back to it?
Heidi, are you speaking with her right now?
No, with Sam.
Okay, with Sam.
This is the second time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Vice Versa.
It happened to you that one time at Health and Human Services.
Yeah,
Remember?
it cut, it wouldn't, I recognize.
Well, how about if we
Okay.
move on, and then later on, if we're able to establish that connection, we'll pause the meeting if the board's okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, we will close the public comment section. Thank you so much, everybody who came today. You're welcome to stay as long as you like, of course. The next item on the agenda is to approve the county board minutes from March 12th.
Also move?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, consent comments and approval of agenda. Commissioner Ward?
I would like to pull for a little more discussion, 6.3 and 6.5. And then, just a point of information at the end, please.
So we'll make 6.3 and 6.5, 7.7 and 7.8, if that's okay.
It is with me. I don't think there's anybody here that, yeah, that would be fine.
Is that okay? Commissioner Olson,
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Meyer,
Nothing,
Ms.
thanks.
Holte, Ms. Sullivan,
Nothing for me either, thank you.
okay. We would then need a motion to.
Move to approve the amended agenda.
I will second.
Motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve the amended agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Ms. Holte, can you read the consent items into the record, please?
Yes. 6.1, approve LG 220 gambling application for exempt permit Pickwick Mill Incorporated. 6.2, approve revised professional services agreement and business associate agreement with Melissa McLaren for professional consultation and reflective supervision services. 6.3 was pulled. 6.4, approve Take Our Daughters and Sons to Work Day. 6.5 was pulled. 6.6, authorize disposal of excess furniture and equipment. And 6.7, confirm payment of disbursements.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us down to general business. Item 7.1, receive update from Laura Peterson regarding the ARPA funds.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Happy to be back. I am just here to provide a brief overview and answer any questions that I'm capable of answering. So as a general reminder, the county was awarded a total of $9,805,925. As of March 1st, we had paid out just over $8,700,000 with slightly over $1 million remaining. You can see some allocations. Thank you, Heidi. So this information is the same that was provided in your board packet. It just looks slightly nicer up on the screen. So you can see that the broadband funds have fully been spent out. It was $2,625,052. That was a board approved allocation to HBC. And I'll go a little bit further into detail about each of these allocations as we move through the presentation. Small business support was $2 million. That has also been fully spent out. We had special projects, which were community-based or external to the county at $2,574,813. You can see we've spent over $2 million, have just under $400,000 remaining. And then internal or county-based projects came out at $2,606,060, again, with almost $2 million spent and just over $650,000 remaining. We do anticipate that all of these funds will be spent by the required timeline of December 31st of this year. If you would go to the next slide, please. Just to highlight that the broadband service expansion happened throughout Pickwick, Sylvan Heights, the Arches, Ridgeway, and Green Terrace, and all those projects were completed at the end of 2023. In partnership with the Winona Area Chamber of Commerce, 109 businesses received funding through the Small Business Support Project, and those funds were expended at the end of May 2022. Next slide, please. I just want to highlight the external and internal project totals, and then I'll just highlight a couple of specific projects, and again, answer questions or highlight others if you have interest in that. 23 projects were funded for external community-based projects. 12 of those have been completed. The remainder are in progress and making good progress. Internally, 9 projects were funded, 3 have been completed, and the remaining projects, again, are still in process and, again, making good headway. Next slide, please. So I'll just highlight a couple of external projects and a couple of internal projects. the Winona County Fair Board received funding from our ARPA funds. They created a new, or created a new bathroom facility to provide greater resources to those who use the fairgrounds, both for the Winona County Fair and any special events that take place there. And this is just a quote from one of their report submissions, thanking the county board and letting folks know that many events have been scheduled, and they're very thankful for the opportunity to make that improvement to the county fairgrounds, hopefully allowing many more people to have a better experience while they're there. Next slide, please. SEMCAC serves Winona County, and as a part of the funds that they received, they used dollars to revise and build new Head Start playground equipment at their St. Charles site as well as their Winona site. And again, this is just a quote from them saying how excited they are to have a revitalized playground and the opportunity for their participants, their children who are using those facilities to grow and learn while they have access to safe play structures. Next slide, please. I'll just highlight two internal projects. There is a pretty large septic infrastructure project in the works, and the staff there provided this table which has a great deal of information, but overall 9 residential projects were completed, 2 commercial projects. There, as you can see, 3 of the 9 residential projects were considered imminent threats to public health, and 5 were failing to protect the groundwater. So this is a sort of a grant project, which individuals are eligible for up to $5,000 to support the cost of repair and replacement of their septic. And again, you can see some of the pollution reduction components there as well. And I am not an expert in that, so that would be a good question for the folks who are. But did you have a question?
Yeah, is that in the board packets?
No.
Slides? So who
Yep.
coordinated this one? Because we have a lot of things going on with septic. So who coordinated these dollars?
So Sheila Harms and Lou Overhog are responsible for the ARPA fund dollars that are related to this particular project.
Was it
And
countywide or was it the
Yep.
Whitewater? Because I know the Whitewater.
it's countywide.
Sheila's still here.
It is countywide. So there are folks who have received the funds from all over the county, and I don't have the data of who exactly those people are, but I can pull that together for you and request it from those who deliver the project directly.
Again, did that fall under this chart? I don't remember seeing.
So the language in the chart.
You have septic replacement, 9 households. Is that?
Yep.
Is that
Yep, it's the same information, and I note that 142 pounds of nitrogen per year have been, I can't remember the word I used, but reduced, I guess, as well as the 48 pounds of phosphorus. So this is just the entire chart that they provided to me, and I pulled pieces of that for that narrative.
I guess I think I would be interested to see where they don't need names, but where these systems were replaced.
Okay, I can create a map of that for you.
Okay. And how many dollars then? It was a cost share? Or was it a total?
Yep.
It's a cost share
No,
for
it's
them?
typically a cost share. Again,
so many
I
dollars.
don't distribute the funds directly to the individuals, but I can find that information
Yeah,
as
total
well.
funds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next slide, please. The last project that I'll highlight is some fire and EMS recruitment. So the fire and EMS folks are busy trying to recruit, and just highlight some things that they've been up to. They hosted booths at the county fair, as well as the fire department open houses in Wilson, Pickwick, and Goodview. They had some signs created and displayed across the county in Wilson, St. Charles, Pickwick, Minnesota City, and Goodview. The Goodview Fire and Rescue added 8 people since the campaign, and 5 of those referenced the social media ads that were paid for with dollars. And they did receive 100 email inquiries from social media ads as well. So there has been some direct connection to the outreach and marketing that has been happening. With that, I can just highlight from that chart. You can go to the next slide, Heidi. I'll finish up in just a second. That I tried to provide a general overview of what folks have been doing, where they're at, noted which projects were complete, and all of the information that's contained within that kind of 4-ish pages of information came directly from the grantee. So they provide information with each of their requests for reimbursement. And I tried to consolidate the highlights, if you will, out of all of the requests for reimbursement that they have submitted since their project started. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
Yes.
Thank you.
Some of these are private 501(c)(3)s.
Yep.
Okay, and they have to file a report with their tax and everything. I think it's a 990. So can we request receiving copies of those forms? Because it relates to how they spend it should highlight their goals and objectives, and then it should relate to how much money we gave to them to see if it was really
Well,
value.
a 501c3's 990 is going to be their entire
Okay, is it the
income and
is it the
expenses.
990 form that I'm looking for? I've never been a 501(c)(3).
I'm not sure which form you're looking for.
Ms. Holte knows, it's the
Okay.
one that I provided you, yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
And then that way we can kind of see if there was value added to our community by what they said they were going to do and what they should have some results also listed in those reports.
Okay.
Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although I would think that they don't have to file those until next year.
Right.
And so
Right,
we
so-
won't see it for a while.
Yeah, but when they do,
In case there was something you wanted maybe to ask them to send us faster than that, if this sort
well,
of
if they can
my point.
they can add to the dog and pony show of what they did with the money. It'd be in private emails or information if they want to. One other question, and you indicate that most of them say this money will be spent. If it's not spent by the end of 2024, will we get it back? Will we take it back?
They don't have the money. Everything is a request for reimbursement. So they were allocated a particular amount based on their
So we're
grant
still
application and
fully-
what the board approved, but the county holds that money.
Okay.
And then quarterly, they can submit a request for reimbursement, which requires, appropriate documentation and a summary of what they've been doing with the funds. And then if it comes to October and they're not looking that they're going to spend all of their funding, I would work with Maureen to ensure that either those dollars are spent internally or that we're communicating with our federal partners to figure out what the process is. At this point, I have not seen any guidance as to if funds are not fully expended by the entities that ultimately receive them, that they would be, have to be returned, or if there's an opportunity for an extension. I have not seen any guidance to that at this point.
Well, I'm sure we could find a good way to spend those
Yes.
funds as this organization versus just having to spend them. I think we got a project on the list that we could move up. Okay,
Anybody else?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 7.2, receive public safety building task force update. Is that something who will take the lead on that? Or is that Commissioner Ward and I?
It's anticipating review efforts.
Okay.
Both Commissioner Ward and yourself would like to.
Commissioner Ward, I'll start off and then you can jump in.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty detailed notes, which were appreciated.
Thank you.
Not easily done, but
I'll start off and then you can jump in. We met a number of times between the city and the county. County Sheriff Ganrud was there, Police Chief Mr. Williams, Deputy Chief of Police Jay Rasmussen, et cetera, number of county staff, et cetera. The discussions I thought went very well. There was, after all those discussions and after tours and after more information, I don't think that there is a clear consensus on what to do next, but we wanted to bring this to the full county board for discussion. And the idea is not to make a decision tonight, correct? The idea is just to widen the discussion to include all the county board commissioners. And what's happening at the city council is they're doing the same thing. The two members, Mr. Borzakowski and Mr. Haima, are bringing it back to the city council. We'll have individual discussions, and then we can have another more follow-up discussions. Anything else, Commissioner Ward?
I am very glad that we made them open to the public. I see reporter Rogers is in the audience, and I think he did an accurate, because as I think all of us are getting a lot of emails and concerns, what's going on in the community and how we're going to respond. Yeah, there is no clear, concise, if it was easy, yeah, if it was easy, it'd be easy, but it's not going to be easy. And we haven't determined what the best course of action will be. A lot of moving parts, a lot of big scary numbers when you start talking about, remodeling or changing or rebuilding, huge dollars, which are very concerning to a lot of people.
Anything else, Ms. Holte? Or
We will be coordinating a joint meeting with the city and county in April. So we're exchanging some dates, and a survey will come out shortly to get that set.
Commissioner Meyer, Commissioner Olson, any thoughts or questions?
Yeah,
Commissioner Meyer?
I do. So in the packet, the summary of the issue asks what we might need in terms of additional information, right? And so I did call and I spoke with Administrator Holte because page 93, this is like, what's the difference between 2 and 3? That was not particularly clear to me. And so we went through some of those things, but I think to maybe flesh out this particular chart for the things that we talked about. So if I understood it right, option 2 is building a new facility in the LAC parking lot. But 3 is using the pro-build site. And that potentially it would be joint ownership if it was on the pro-build site. And that I think the numbers are a little, well, and so we went through that as well. So that, it has the same price, except then it's got these notes and then there's a dollar number by the notes. So maybe to incorporate all of those items so that we can say, well, no, option 2 is not really just 23 to 26, but there's another 5 million, and that's, what is that for? And 3 has the 1.5 to 2, and what is that for? And then option 3 includes, under the notes, it indicates to include other functions. And then you, Administrator Holte, you sent this to us earlier, and this has been updated to reflect not just the information that we're going to talk about in a little bit about the license center, but then the potential of actually putting the license center and the storage into option 3. Could that not be put into option 2? Or was it just not discussed?
Commissioners, I don't recall us discussing specifics about what would potentially go in either scenario. I do specifically recall on the pro-build site that we talked about other functions such as the license center.
And my understanding, the difference between 2 and 3 is 3, that, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, 3, the LAC gets demoed. It's, right? The main difference in my mind between 2 and 3 is in option 3, as it's listed here, the existing LAC will be demolished after the new facility is built. Is that correct? Okay. Yes. Minus the dispatch center.
And so in both options 2 or 3, what happens to dispatch?
Dispatch stays there.
Regardless,
Yeah.
it stays
That's
there.
in the jail. That's in the jail complex.
Well, next to the jail.
Well,
Yeah.
to me, it's new construction. Yeah.
Okay, and the other thing that I had talked to Administrator Holte about is, so one of my goals is really to minimize the expenditure. I've talked about this before, that we just spent 28 million on the jail. And I understand that our LEC needs, I think Mr. Lafee indicated probably about 4 million, but BKV said, no, it's really more like 5 million to do the HVAC and all of the other stuff. But that doesn't resolve the issues that the sheriff and Chief Deputy Mueller have talked to me about, which is that there have in the past been some issues with climate control for the evidence, right? So that, and that there isn't a safe place to process all the evidence, including like fentanyl. And there was another, I don't know if it was interview rooms, but there are things that are deficient. So it is not just the 5 million or 4 million to fix, the building itself, but to be able to actually continue to use it, even if it was only for the sheriff, it would still be some additional amount of money. And that is not something that was estimated. And so I think when we were speaking, Administrator Holte pointed me in the kind of more to like the 16 to 19 million number. Is that, did I remember that?
Approximately 9 million apiece is what I was ballparking. Again, assuming we come to agreement about what the facility would contain.
So, the goal would be though, if we build a new facility, that the city and the county would contribute 9 million to that. But if we don't manage to get there and we needed to keep the LEC and upgrade it without the police, it's still some number. And I assume that number is more than 9 million. And you're not sure?
No.
But that was really what I was trying to understand, because in my mind, we spent a lot of money on a jail. Yes, we need to do upgrades, but I would like to minimize that to the extent possible, because it takes away from other things that the county needs to do. And that, we just heard about the water issues and the issues with wells, people's private wells, and there are just ongoing issues. So I would be interested in at least trying to figure out what's the least cost option, right? Which I think is what this tries to get to. The other thing is, are any of the items, I'm thinking of page 84 and 85 of the packet. And so the training area includes the indoor gun range and a workout facility. And these are items that if there's any way if there's anything else that can be eliminated, then I would support doing that. I've had folks explain to me that when we had the indoor gun range before, then we had lead contamination and then, that was, so do we really want that? And then can we make some other kind of an arrangement?
Learn from our mistakes.
Let's say the Y has workout facilities. Can we just help people get a pass to go there as opposed to having to, recreate that for having our own facility? So I'd be interested in any other things that can really reduce the price tag.
Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Olson.
Yeah. I appreciate you trying to spend less money. And I think one of the things that I heard is, yes, regardless, we need a better evidence filtration thing, but I think that's not a huge, big building. It's a room. We never talked about dimensions or anything, but it needs a certain ventilation system and everything. But I don't think it's millions of dollars. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it can be accomplished. And that was one of the big things that we do need. And that's just the new way of handling drugs. Yes, the heating and the electrical, I think are critical, but there's a lot of space in that. We used to use the whole basement for sentence to serve. There's a lot of space in there that could be used for things. And I'm sure we're all getting the same emails. I hate to say it, fancy offices or new offices with new chairs and furniture don't create more public safety. People want public safety and they want the whole mental health issue and everything. So do we create some opportunities for that versus building and again, I think these figures, they're high, but I think they're probably not high enough the way building costs go and the way estimates are. I think you're absolutely right. I think there's there's a lot of wants on this list. If we were building new and you did all these things, yeah. But I don't think, Winona County isn't growing. I think, didn't Bob Bamnick say we lost 50,000 people? I mean, we're not growing, so hopefully our population isn't, getting worse what we have. But yes, to get it down to a manageable, because it's all taxpayer. And again, the city initially really thought they were going to get more money from the state legislature. That does not seem to be an option. So it would be totally on local property taxes, both city and county. And we just did that. We've got that bill. How can we provide public safety and all the other programs and things that we should be prioritizing over building some new building. And I've said this before, I never have lived in a new house, probably will never live in a new house. I've fixed up houses and you do it in pieces and you manage it. I think we have to manage our dollars the best we can. And, but again, I'm just one person. But there are some very priority things that we need to do, but I think it can be done with much less than what we're anticipating here.
Commissioner Olson?
So I work in a relatively new facility, the Houston County Justice Center, and it has locker rooms and meeting rooms that sit empty a lot of time, most of the time. So when I questioned, I had several calls into Marine on, has the city approved these wants versus the needs? And why are we comparing dollars to things that we don't know are approved yet? If they're gonna have an indoor gun range, are they gonna have a workout facility? So that skews all the numbers when you're looking at them initially, and it kind of scares you. So until it's determined that, yes, they will have these. I mean, at first it was indoor parking and an indoor parking garage. And again, I work on these facilities. You have carbon monoxide detectors, you have flammable gas detectors that need periodic maintenance, and it's a money pit. The room that they have for evidence in Houston County, 10 by 12 about, and it has an exhaust fan that goes out the roof to take away the fumes from any potential drugs. And I go up on the roof and I change the belt on that fan. So I'm wondering where my protection is.
You're expendable.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that
Sorry.
they go through all this stuff in the evidence room to protect the officers, and I'm up on the roof changing the belt. So I can't trust any of these numbers because I don't know what the wants and the needs are going to end up being. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Ms. Holte?
Part of the dialogue with the committee was to kind of set, what is that outside parameter of expenditures? And I know that the city, some of the council said, 10 million, not more than 10 million. I'm not saying the county said that, but the intent was to find some parameter and then go back and discuss it as a group and say, okay, are we willing to see if we can make it work with that? Doesn't mean they're going to get everything they want, but we need to know, are both parties in this? Are we going to work towards it or not? I mean,
Well, and with that said, the sentiment is to both police and sheriff to stay together.
correct.
That was the commonality of any discussions. Everybody agreed they should stay together.
Yeah.
So that kind of sets a certain amount of parameter.
I want to start there. That was one of my highest priorities, is to make sure that we keep the county sheriff and the city police department together. There's all kinds of reasons to do that in terms of synergy, public safety, et cetera. Was also very interested in any kind of new arrangements that could make new mental health partnerships, if it's, in terms of dispatch, crisis response teams, to allow, physical remodeling to make those kind of flow things happen. Also very interested in, one thing that I'll just say this, I was surprised and still a little bit skeptical that it costs more money to remodel the existing building. And I realized that you have to relocate, but I couldn't believe that it costs that much money to remodel. Because I do think there is an obvious need to update and remodel that building in a lot of ways. And there's ways to possibly restructure it that there's the brick and mortar costs and then there's the long-term staffing costs. It's something I want to say again is if there's ways, I don't want to like cut all kinds of people, but there's ways to like reduce duplication. And if you could save one job over 10 years, that's almost $1 million in savings, et cetera. And there's ways to make it much more public friendly. I also wanted to see if there was ways to kill multiple birds with that stone in terms of a license center and or storage and or things like that. But I don't think we're quite there yet though. And it was interesting asking the people in the room who are far smarter than me, which was everybody, like what their thoughts were in terms of, there seemed to be a rough consensus about number 2 or number 3. And Aaron had a good point about maybe a smaller new building and move. The existing is at $7.5 million from the state, assumes that it's for a regional, some kind of regional training facility, maybe move the training facility. Aaron, I think your suggestion was something we hadn't considered to the pro build building perhaps, but I still can't believe it costs that much money to remodel because the dispatch center shows me that you could remodel that space and make it a modern facility because you do need to update that. I still can't believe. I talked about, and this is probably crazy talk, getting a second opinion, but I realize with architects, that's a very expensive dollar amount to talk about second opinions. I just can't believe it costs more money to remodel than to build new, et cetera.
That's in the plan. That's just always in the plan.
Ms. Holting.
We need to be mindful that that estimate was based on what
Regional.
they asked them to
Right.
do as the city, not as a how can we best utilize this space for county and city.
Yes.
And that includes like the gun range and the workout rooms and separation of reception. So there are many aspects that were not taken into the BKV report.
Mr. Olson.
So I grew up youngest of 8 kids and my family father didn't add rooms to the house. He added bunk beds. And it worked. And my brothers and I don't get along to this day, but I was the youngest. But I mean, there are ways to get there. And again, we're not growing. The state demographer says we're shrinking in Winona County. So unless crime is increasing, the more office space doesn't provide more public safety on the street.
Ms. Holting.
So in a nutshell, what I'm looking for is what more does the board need in order to make a decision? Are we going to move forward with the next steps of narrowing this down, figuring out what we can and can't do and for how much? I mean, we can't really get into the details of specific cost until we have some kind of design.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at some point, we need to make a decision.
Commissioner Ward, and then Ron, can I ask you if you have any other thoughts? You don't need to, but if you want any other thoughts or if Aaron has any other thoughts as well, Commissioner Ward.
The one thing that I have not heard clear and plainly is if the city is willing to spend that $7.5 million they got for the buying new land and making up a plan to remodel. To me, that's critical. If they can get the wording changed in state legislation, that we could possibly remodel what we have, that would go a long way. But I haven't heard them ask that, and they seem to be reluctant to get clarity on that. The one other thing too, in their the list of things, training. They wanted rooms for training and everything, and they thought, oh, this is. And they use the word regional, and to me, regional has a much different definition than their definition of regional. So I took the liberty of calling Wabasha and Houston County Sheriffs. And I said, would you be sending your people to Winona County to receive training? They said, no. I mean, so again, the city's idea of regional training people was Goodview, maybe Lewiston, St. Charles. I mean, it was very combined. And my idea of training is counties, in the neighborhood, a much bigger geography. So there was a lot of room in here for training facilities that I think Commissioner Olson's referring to that might be sitting empty in these other facilities, but they weren't going to send their people here. So it would just be within Winona County.
From
So
the
that,
county sheriffs, maybe not the city police departments. And I think they also talked about maybe inviting people from across the river as well. et
yeah,
cetera.
but I think that's
Yeah.
a big pipe dream. I mean, and why would we build facilities for Wisconsin people to come here? I'm sorry, on our taxpayer dollars,
Sure.
I would just say that you have it right. They're not going to come here for a lot of trainings.
No.
They do come here occasionally for some.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about Wabasha, Houston, Olmsted, Fillmore. They do like us. They do in-house training whenever they can. But again, there's 22 deputies, and then I have the jail staff, another 24. And we have our SOAR team, we have our dive team, we have the local police departments. The Winona Police Department is bigger than my sheriff's office. So there's a lot of people that receive training. And again, we try to do it in-house, do it here in Winona. And yes, we can see if we can get Sobieski Lodge, or sometimes we get Holsinger, but they're not real ideal for training. So I understand what Chief Williams is saying when he says we do regional training, but I think your idea and his idea and my idea is a little different.
very different.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so the question is for Administrator Holte. From what we have talked about, do you have what you need? Or do you need more of a concrete decision? Because when you and I spoke on the phone and you said, I think we could get this down to 9 million apiece. I think it's going to be 9 million if we do something on our own for the LEC. So then I would say that's the least expensive option, and it gets a lot of what's asked for and probably is better for the entire community. So that's just my opinion.
I gotta get authority to park vehicles under the bridge. Because parking is always going to be a problem. I'm working on that. Haven't got an answer yet. But I mean, seriously, you look at, space and utilization of space.
Don't park a boat under there.
No, but I mean, there's that one whole lane that, I mean, seriously, I'm working on it.
A lot of room.
Yeah, there is a lot of room. Okay.
And these current plans, Ms. Holte, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No,
Didn't include the license center. I mean, these were for regional facilities, et cetera. Because to me, one bridge we haven't crossed is the license center. And maybe that's something we can get to in the next discussion, the next item. Because I do want a modern facility for our law enforcement. There is a need to upgrade that building, but I'm not sure if we need 28 million. But if it is a shared facility, that's different. And if we are able to access the even half of the 7.5 million, that does change the dynamics of it. And I do think that there are some things in the requests, like both of you had mentioned, that I think there's a general consensus among some, I can't speak for the entire city council, that there's also, if it's a gun range, perhaps not needed. If it's a blank, there's one or two other things that maybe we don't need as well.
Could I just make one point also?
Please.
I just thought of, as far as the training room that we have a training room right now, but it's too small. And we use that for our EOC also. When Ben needs to bring in, when we had the flood in 2007, we used that exclusively. And I mean, that room was jam packed. It was way too small. I would say that whatever training area we had, we do the same thing. We would use that as a multiple use room.
Yep.
And that's something we really need.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've been to trainings that Ben does for emergency planning and tabletop exercises. He rents the Wannock Hall at the History Center, or he rents the community room in St. Charles. And so there is a need for that. And that is regional in the sense that all of the, first responders from across the county come for those trainings.
It's also important to acknowledge that the training room can be used for more just than law enforcement. It can be the city employees and the county employees. I mean, we have trainings that require a larger space, but also events such as our employees, celebration for years of service. We crowd in the break room downstairs and there's not enough room. And I realize that's one event, but what I'm saying is, I believe a room, if it's appropriate in size, will be used by all.
Well, I think the whole key is anything that gets built, and I'm not for building anything, it has to be multi-purpose. It's just like Commissioner Olson said in a house. You add a kid, you don't necessarily put an addition on, but I put an addition on, Commissioner Olson. I should take it off now because the kids are gone. I got too much space and stuff. And we built an 80-bed jail and it's not full either. So we got some space. Again, is it multi-purpose space? I know you got it. Yeah, but again, if it's not occupied, yeah, you could do draining in there.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, we also sometimes have really big issues where we have, public hearings where we've had to rent other spaces. So, but I did want to just say thank you to you, Commissioner Regularly, to you, Commissioner Ward, to you, Sheriff, and to you, Facilities Director Lafee, and to you, Administrator Holte, for the time and effort that you've put in and working through all of these issues with folks from the city. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I wish we were there yet, but I don't think we're there yet in terms of either the side. Are we? Am I missing it? Did I? No.
We're not there.
We're getting there. And,
Yes.
and there was a lot of good discussions and there's so many overlapping circles, holy moly. And there's also the issue of, do you build it on the pro-build block? Do you build it over here? There's just so many. So what's the best way to move forward? Should we individually maybe contact you in terms of, in addition to our discussion right here?
If you have questions, you need additional information. Again, we're working on setting up a joint meeting for additional dialogue between the two entities.
I got a question on a policy. Would it require, if we're spending more than $15 million, would it require a 4/5 vote? This is something that the public really, it is bothersome to them that, and its city council would be what, 4 out of 7? Could make the decision, and on this board, it could be 3 out of 5. Is that any major expenditure should be, at least a supermajority vote. So maybe that's a new policy we need to put on, and you did here too.
I would just add one thing. So I work in a 12-year-old, 13-year-old facility. And right next to it, we have the historic courthouse. I've replaced both the new boilers in the new facility since I've worked there. The new stuff was very efficient, but doesn't last as long. So the cost savings deplete rapidly.
Sheriff and Aaron, is there anything else that we as a board, this is rare, the first time we've had, and I wish Josh was here, a chance to discuss it as a whole. Anything else we should be considering?
I guess the only thing for consideration is, will the city still want to partner with us if we say no gun range, none of this? I mean, we need to figure some of that stuff out too.
That's why we need that meeting in April.
Yep, just to see if we're going one direction, we say we're going to build new and we're going to say, absolutely, we don't want this or that size of training rooms. Are they going to back out? Or I think some of that conversation needs to take place yet. I really don't have a recommendation on any of the options, but I guess a recommendation to the board is I'm frugal as everybody else. Don't always just pick the cheapest option. Look, what are we going to need for the next 20, 30, 40 years? So, we're not picking, spend $2 more million and we could have had this, and we may need like the license center. It's either we're going to pay for it, $40,000 a year in rent after 15 years. It's 1.5 million.
Got a plan for that.
You got a plan for that.
I got a plan.
And not just, license center, we have dive rescue, we have a bunch of other things that we're renting, look at the big picture, not just police and sheriff.
There's land for sale out in Lewiston.
There we go.
And St.
I'll
Charles.
tell you some.
And Nodine.
Sheriff, anything else? Or you don't need to, I apologize.
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
for your,
Thank
for
you.
your time.
All right. Thank you.
So we don't have a consensus. And I know
No.
sometimes the staff wants the elected bodies to give a dollar amount, but I don't think that we're ready to give a dollar amount because we don't have other things. We need more information. Like for me, I would like to know one specific thing. What how could we include, possibly include the license center
Yeah.
in this facility?
Got a plan for that.
And how could we possibly integrate more mental health alternative services as well? And the city has been very interested. It's been wonderful. In addition to thanking the county folks, I want to thank all the city staff as well, Mr. Ubel and everybody else, because they were good discussions. They were good discussions. We still have a ways to go, but they were good discussions. Anything else, commissioners? Okay. That would take us on to the next item on the agenda. I think Commissioner Ward's all ready for.
Commissioner,
Yeah, I got a
Bateman,
plan.
did you call on Chastity?
I apologize.
Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
Yes. The person who was
Awesome.
Chastity, if you're
Chastity
still there, I
Siraki,
apologize for our
1254
technology
West 3rd
issues.
Street,
She wanted to
Winona.
speak during the
So
public
I
comment.
wanted to make a
let's pause
comment
for a second.
on the discussion that was
Yes,
had
thank
during the
you.
committee
Sorry
of the
about that.
board regarding the Winona County Board ground rules. Commissioner Ward was talking about section A, number 8, and a couple of the commissioners commented that they thought that pertained to the board ground rules. However, I was reading while you guys were on break, and if you go to section E, number 1, it says modifications, additions, or deletions to this policy may be proposed at any meeting, special or regular, of the commissioners, but cannot be voted on until the next regular county board meeting. A simple majority is needed to modify, add, or delete rules at that time. So I think Commissioner Ward's point is right that section A, number 8, pertains to policy decisions as a whole, not just the ones pertaining to this particular board ground rules. So anyway, that's all.
Thank you, Chastity. I apologize for the technology issue. Okay, going back to item 7.3, approve, I'm sorry, is that correct?
Yep,
Approve lease agreement and amendment for license center. Ms. Holtby, is that you?
I am going to tag team with Mr. Levy. So we tried to lay out the information in reference to the license center. I guess I'm going to ask Mr. Lefebvre to come up and share the locations that he considered or looked at, just so that you have a basis of the work that went into trying to find a location.
Right, yeah, that was one of my questions. What did we look at?
A few of the locations that we looked at was, we looked at China King Buffet, the old, out by the, kind of out by Shopko.
Yep.
Mhm.
That was empty. There was the Wells Fargo building in Goodview. They wouldn't lease it out, but they would sell it for $1 million. We checked out Winona Knitting Mills. We did a bunch of
Hold on,
negotiating.
Wells Fargo, they'll sell that for $1 million? How big of a building is that?
Goodview. I'd have to look back at my notes. I don't have that with me.
But it must come with a good sized lot?
It has a decent parking lot, yes.
Okay, all right. Heck, $1 million is cheap in today's market.
Yep. Looked at Winona Knitting Mills, and after some negotiation, they thought we had too much foot traffic because we have anywhere from 180 to 220 people a day that visit the license center. So they didn't want all that foot traffic, so they declined any movement on that. We looked at the Sears building, that ended up selling. We looked at Caldwell Banker. We looked at the strip mall next to Domino's. Verizon took that, they beat us to it. Been in contact with a few realtors, Tom Hosek from Main Square. We looked at ProBuild to kind of talk to Lucy from Port Authority, and it was kind of up in the air because they have other plans for that building also, depending on what happens with the police station, et cetera. And looked at a few others. They were, third floor, which with 180 to 220 people, third floor is not really going to best option. They don't want us, just wear and tear on elevators, everything like that. Looked at a few other ones, like HBC, that was like 13 or 1400. It was just too small. Looked at a few other ones, and they kind of already remodeled, so it'd be like small offices, and we need an open floor plan, and they weren't even interested in tearing down the walls. They said, we just spent 70 grand remodeling. We're not gonna wipe it out unless we paid for it, which now, that price really gets escalated. So the one that, we found that would kind of work out the best would be, it's attached to the Winona Mall, but it's not being bought by the school, and that would be the Quality Back and Sew on the backside of the mall.
Do we have confirmation that the school district is that a closed deal? The last I read, it's still negotiating.
It's not closed yet. I talked to the superintendent of the Hiawatha Valley thing. They were hoping to close in April, but things can change, I guess.
Okay.
Set in
All right,
stone.
That's
So
kinda
it hasn't been closed yet.
Okay, it's not a done deal.
Not a done deal.
Okay. Oh, Chelsea, looks like you got something. Huh?
Which usually happens from title ahead of closing,
Mm-hmm.
but that's happened a few times throughout this process where all of a sudden we have title companies, et cetera, calling, asking about the taxes on the property. That's not a guarantee that they're moving forward, but it's motion that we've heard.
Would a school district pay full property taxes or this organization? It's not the school district, it's the Hiawatha. Yeah, is that a separate entity?
I'd have to defer to John, but I believe, so whatever year they purchased it, those taxes would have to be paid. And then moving forward is where they could apply for exempt. And it sounds like they're going to have some retail space in there still for years to come. So it would be kind of a split classification to my understanding.
Okay, so in my mind, until we know that it's a done deal, I guess I'm not anxious to sign a new lease with a very expensive lease and a very, very profitable for the landlord. And it really kind of puts us in a, we're by reading it, we're paying for a lot more space than we currently have. We're obligated to, as is, so we're obligated to fix it all up. And the way I read it, if the HVAC or anything goes wrong, we're fixing. If the roof goes bad, we're fixing. There's an escalator in there. Maybe did I read it wrong? But it seems like it's a real sweet deal for the landlord and really not such a good deal for the county.
For the HVAC, we're in charge of the maintenance as in changing the furnace filters out. And as long as we do that, let's say the compressor goes out on the HVAC unit, for AC compressor, they pay for all of that. They pay for the roof leaks.
Okay, that's not the way, I guess I didn't read it that, I thought we were more obligated than that. No?
No.
No? What's the condition of all that stuff?
The condition of the roof, I haven't checked it out until we move, if we move forward with it, I can,
Okay.
climb up on the roof, stuff like that. But
Unknown and we don't know.
unknown, but if there's any roof leaks, they're responsible for all of that. If the furnace HVAC unit goes out, as long as we show the preventative maintenance on it, which is in the lease, they pay 100% of all the repairs then. So if we can show that we're changing the filters, which is very minimal, and something goes out and we don't neglect it, they pay for all the repairs.
I understand you looked at other things, but it's a considerably larger size. It's like 1,300 more square feet than we already have. We're going from 1,900 up to 3,150.
Yes.
So
I guess we
again,
never really picked square footage. We know we need around the 1,800. I think we have 1,900 now.
anyway,
There's a little bit of-
is there any way we can divide that building down? Or the landlord can? Because we're already, so you're already, if you're doing this, you're going up $20,000, just a bare minimum a year for rent.
Yep.
And we don't make money with it the way it is now, the licensing. We'll lose more money.
They will not divide it up. I've already asked. They will. I've been in a little bit of contact with the state, but got to be careful what I ask of them.
No, you don't.
Well,
What are you asking them? I mean,
if I let them know where we're going, they run there and try to rent the building out from under us.
the state of Minnesota?
Yes.
Well, then they can take it over. I'd see if they rent it. So I got a plan. All right.
So we couldn't divide it up. They usually won't sublease. We could divide it up. We could use the other half for storage, depending what happens with, the other topic we just decided, depending if we.
Storage. You guys
Depending if we
store
tear down LEC or not, do we make storage?
we store, in my opinion, we store too many things. I mean, supposed to be a paperless society. Where did that go?
Look at that, Commissioner Ward.
Okay, I had a so we've danced with, let's privatize this, okay, in the past. All right, we've danced with it, but we've never really given it any really hard, concrete look. Okay, so I called Rochester. Commissioner Elsing has talked about Rochester several times. There's a gentleman over there, Jeff Orth. He has done this since 1981. He's got 6 locations. I asked him, do you think it's sellable? You know, because he's been in the business. He runs one in St. Paul. He runs one, I think, in Cannon Falls, couple Maplewood, maybe in Bloomington, couple, and in Rochester. So he's in some big cities and some small cities. And I asked, you know, because I asked him, do you think if a private entity took it over, could they make money? And he said, yes. His answer was yes. Now he did outline, and I know we've talked about this, the process. You have to tell the state of Minnesota and you have to post it and see if the city wants it, if they don't, and everything else. But I think we got some time. And his opinion, because he rents a lot of spaces and he rents some expensive spaces up in the cities too, is that the landlord is doing nothing to build out for us. We're assuming all the expenses on this new facility and such. And he said, you know, a lot of his contracts, he gets at least a couple months rent to do a build out. And we seem like we're just, we take it as is and we're going to spend all our money to fix it up. I just don't know if that's what we need to do. And he's more than willing, as an individual, more than willing to come in and talk to us how this process would work, or work with any private entity that wanted to take it over as a private business. So I really think, first of all, I think we need to wait till April to see if the school district really does, you know, buy it and kicks us out. And we have to move. That would be number one on mine. And then the number 2 would be to actually go through the process and see if we can sell it, because we don't make money. He did say the fees on, I think driver's license went up, some fee went up, and he said that's a good thing. It needed to go up. It hadn't gone up for a long time. So he said there is a little bit more, you know, profit in there and stuff. But I was encouraged by talking to him. He runs a number of them, and he's got like 130 employees, and, you know, does major metropolitan ones and smaller ones. It seems to make it work.
Commissioner Meyer, thank you. Chelsea. After Commissioner Meyer first.
Yeah, thanks. So I spoke with Administrator Holter earlier today. Now, it was my understanding that part of the difference in the space is that we have to provide a public bathroom, right? And it has to be handicap accessible. And this is something that exists elsewhere in the mall. But in the new site, we have to provide that. So that's part of the remodeling expense. And I think it's not just that, but there also needs to be a facility for lactation. Am I right about that? And so then we have to provide the space for that. So yes, it's true, it's a slightly bigger space, but there are some things that just happen to exist in the mall the way it is that we are going to have to duplicate. And that's something I assume we would have to do anywhere, even if we picked a different site. So I think that's part of the issue. The other thing that concerns me, when we discussed this before, my understanding was that we have to give it up. And yes, maybe it gets offered to the city, but then it isn't a guarantee that the state would decide to even keep an office here. So there might be no office here. And that, again, I think is worth a lot. And when I talk to constituents, they don't want to have to drive to Rochester to renew their licenses. And so I still think even with the increased price, it's an important service to my constituents and to have here in the city of Winona. But the fact that there is an increase makes me think that it is important for us to consider incorporating it into a space that we own, right? And we're in the process of having all those conversations anyway. So that seems like my position would be to go ahead and renew this and then make a longer term plan to potentially put it in a facility that's owned by the county. I don't know what to say about waiting till the end of April. If we're going to lose the quality vac and sew spot, or if we could
If we wait much longer, they're gonna, because we've already been in the process, and if we wait much longer, we're probably gonna lose it, because she has other people waiting. Just talking with Hiawatha Valley, they were gonna close in January, then it was February, then it was March, and now we're to April. We may wait till April and we don't have a decision until May or June, that we're just gonna lose it.
Yep.
I've started searching for the properties in September, October, knowing just
Thanks.
to get the ball rolling. There's not a lot of options in Winona for the layout that we need, kind of the first floor. I have found some and they want $25 a square foot. Right now, this is like $13.50 a square foot.
Okay.
So the prices are even more.
Great.
I'm done.
So, well, how about we go to Ms. Wilbright and then to Commissioner Ward? And before Ms. Wilbright goes, this is a year-by-year lease, if we enter into this?
Multiple years.
2 year, right?
It would end it'd be almost like a 2.5 since we're not starting in January. And then with the option to renew for 2 additional years.
Gotcha. Because any kind of building project is going to take 2 years anyway. So thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Wilbright and Commissioner Ward.
As you mentioned, I just want to give up a quick budget update. As you mentioned, fees did go up. What I handed out was the year-end 2023 for the License Center, as well as January and February for this year. And this year, we're already ahead of our revenues, but focusing on that 23, along with the fees increasing to where we keep more of that, and we didn't know how much of those increase in fees we were going to keep. We're starting to see that reflected in January and February. But there was also a one-time payment to us last year of $41,025.56. So on that top page, that's a full year 23. I did subtract out that revenue. They're at $414,850, where we budgeted $408,500. Expenses, since we did get those funds, we replaced their printer. That was causing a lot of frustration. And we also got the card machine. So subtracting those 2 expenses that we did partially because the state shared more of their revenue with us, we would have been at $423,243. So overall, the License Center was profitable last year. A lot of that is to the state extending some of those revenues to us. But just wanted to point that out and that we are starting to see those increase in fees staying with us, which we didn't know in the budget cycle.
So we made a profit, looks like $9,000 or something like
Is it a
that.
profit or are we short? The
But-
expenses are 423 and the revenue is 414.
Yeah.
Am I reading that?
Had they not issued us those and had we not purchased, those are less the one-time 41,000 and less those larger purchases, then we would have been short that year. Overall, because we got the 41,000 and we didn't blow it all, we were ahead 21,447 at the end of the year.
Then,
But we'll eat that up in new rent.
yeah,
So we're still at losing money.
yeah. So, and what are you seeing in January then and February?
So January and February, if you look at the total revenue line, so January, we're 8% through the year and their revenues are 12% of what we budgeted. And then February, we're 17% through the year and their revenues are 25% of what we budgeted for this year.
So we're ahead.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Ward.
Yeah. So you mentioned bathrooms and space and everything, but if they're renting it, if they would rent it to any other entity, who requires the bathroom and stuff? I mean, because they don't have one now. I mean, that whole end of the mall. I mean, I'm not real familiar. So who would require this bathroom and everything? If they're a landlord and they rent it to another retail operation, they're not required to? Because we're not a restaurant or anything. We're not serving food or people staying there for any length of time. So where's the requirement for a bathroom and lactating space?
So Commissioner Meyer, I actually talked with Mr. Liffey after you.
Yes.
So he has an update on the bathroom. Great. But the lactation, that is law. We have to provide that for our employees.
Okay,
Not
employees.
The citizens.
Oh, it's the
Okay,
employee.
okay, but what's the bathroom issue then? Is that employees too?
Well,
Not ADA compliant.
It's not, but,
But if it's
As
in
for
the
the
mall
bathroom right
property.
now, there's one bathroom in there and we would be grandfathered in for that bathroom with no updates.
A bathroom in that, so vac and sew area? you
Yes,
mean, or
in
the
that
whole
floor
mall?
plan.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to put a bathroom in then?
We wouldn't have to put a bathroom in.
Okay, all right.
right, we were previously informed we needed.
Okay, all right.
Would that
Okay.
reduce the cost then, this 85,000, 50 to 85,000 then?
Yes, that would reduce the cost. Some of that cost is the furniture, I'll call it workstations out at the current license center.
Why did we just put new stuff in there when we moved over there? I mean, I'm sorry, have you ever been to, probably not, La Crescent? The city of La Crescent does the licensing for that whole end of Houston County. They have one counter and they have some shelving behind and two ladies work there and they do a tremendous job. I don't know, we just moved in there a few years ago. Why are we having to think about more and new? We're not adding staff, we're not adding feature and function, right?
Nope, the furniture that we have is, let's say it's falling apart. You know, I don't want to say every month when we go out there, screws fall out, we got to drill a new hole because they won't go in the hole. The biggest recommendation for that is you'll have a counter height where the customer stands at, and so does staff. So they have a high chair that they got to crawl up into. There's work-related injuries trying to keep climbing up in these chairs day in and day out, day in and, up and down, up and down, up and down.
Is that required? The chair? Again,
I guess you could make somebody stand all day.
well, again, I'm looking at other workplaces and it's the city of La Crescent and I guess I'll have to go down and take a closer look. But I mean, they work out of a closet and they do a tremendous job. And here we're looking at 3,150 feet of space. Which one did you say was too small?
Looked at HBC was one of them, I believe.
And how big
And
was?
looked at a few others. I think they were 1,400 square feet. Another one was, I can't remember what it was. They advertised it as more, but by the time you went to truly measure it, it wasn't quite right.
And what were the comparable rents? What's the square footage rents?
Rents right now, well, let's say our current place is like 1340 a square foot. I think
Right.
this is 1368 is what we're paying now. Proposed is
You're jumping up to
1333.
you're at 1380 and you're jumping up to 1466, I think is what I.
Yeah, with
my math.
utilities.
So what were these other places asking per square foot?
Anywhere from 14 to 23.
Okay, now you're worried about, to resolve the problem of worrying about it getting rented out from under us, we could do a simple right of first refusal. You give them X number of dollars to hold it for you. And if you don't take it, they get that. If they're willing to hold it till we can determine the April or whatever timeline. I mean, I would prefer not to move. We may, if we can stay in the until we decide the total building plan. If we can stay in the current location that we are in the mall for another year or two, because again, I don't know what this school district thing is going to do. And I don't think we have, again.
And I think if the school falls through, they're still trying to actively pursue selling it.
Right, but maybe we can stay there for a couple years till we determine what else we're going to do instead of spending more per rent per year and furniture and all these other things. So give them an option for a first right of refusal if you're afraid somebody's going to rent it out from underneath us. It's kind of cheap it's insurance, but it's an option. A lot of private people do that. If you got a property you like, you put some money down on it and.
And I guess comparable to the proposed license center compared to the Winona Health lease that we just renewed, was the last board meeting. That's at 2054 per square foot. So that's 2,231 square feet, paying almost 46,000 annually.
Yes, it's a lot of money, but it is a pretty nice building.
Ms. Holton?
But we also helped to build that.
Yes, we did.
Paid to
Yes.
do that.
Yep, we always seem to do that. Yes.
So here's the thing. The county can can take the risk, I guess, and wait and see if the mall's gonna sell or not. What are we gonna do if it sells and we don't have enough time to find a place, to build out the place, to get clearance from the state and move? So we don't give services?
No, that's what I'm saying. You give them a first right of refusal, $1,500 or 1 month's rent up front to hold it. We're waiting to see if the school district kicks us out or moves us
How
out.
long do we wait?
Well,
And
until
if
if
they're not
if
willing
there's,
to extend the lease,
well, then we ask the landlord, how long are you willing to wait? How long can we have time to decide? Because I think if they're a tax-paying landlord, they would understand that we really don't want to move twice. And, you know, economics, hey, we move, you bill us, it's going to be reflected in your property taxes. I mean, all we can do is ask. If they say no, then come back to us next meeting and we make a decision. But if we don't ask, we don't know.
I move to go ahead and approve the lease agreement and amendment for the license center as presented to us in the packet.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson. More discussion?
And I'm looking at this building right over here.
That's all.
No, our maintenance building.
Oh,
You know, looks like a good solid building. I think it's underutilized. I mean, if you're talking about good space, people, parking, everything else. I mean, again, we're nitpicking each little thing here and it's very hard. There's a lot of moving pieces and such, but you're committing us to what, 2 years?
a little over 2.
And there
But
is no
we have-
interest to try and sell it?
As an opt-out, Aaron.
Is there no interest to try and sell it with this gentleman that thinks somebody would, he thought very truly somebody would be
I
interested in
think
it?
that we made that decision before.
Well, we didn't have this information. We didn't really, I felt we didn't fully pursue it. I mean, if we really put it out there and said we want to sell it, we kind of, yeah, we might want to sell it.
Commissioner Olson,
When did we make that decision to,
last year sometime.
Well, we didn't know we were getting kicked out of our current facility
October
either.
last year.
so we would need a 4/5 majority to revisit that.
That's right. That's right. But the new circumstances are, we didn't know we were losing our lease with them. We were getting kicked out.
I think we did.
No, not then, not when we,
You have to look the doubt is that.
Yes. Aaron, do you know he's there? Oh,
Yeah, I'm looking at two.
he's looking.
I can't
I
remember.
thought there was a 60-day or 120-day notice.
now that's a different name. Is that still the Alexander's?
The mall.
You came up with Second Chance
Yes.
Properties or something like that?
Nope, that is, John sold that off. I don't know if it was 2 years ago, but he sectioned that part of the mall off
Oh,
and
you're
sold
right.
it.
I'm sorry.
Okay, and so who is the owner? Do you have a
Stacy.
name?
Stacy Herman,
Okay, is she local?
lives in Stockton, I believe.
You would
And they
have-
also own the gym and I think it's Glamour, some craft store, but it's, I would say half of the mall is what they sold off.
Okay.
It's too bad the pro build didn't. I imagine there's 10 plans for that building, but that's too bad. But I'm thank you for looking into that because the pro build is always what I was thinking of. That would have been ideal right there, but
That was my number one pick, but
Yep.
it doesn't
Thank
sound
you.
like it's
Thank you for
going to work
looking
out
into
with
that.
the.
if,
Port Authority.
if Ms. Holte and Aaron, you feel strong about this, I'm willing to also, it's not ideal. I agree, but I'm willing to support the motion as is.
Not interested in the
No.
lease to hold it,
Not
to know what
currently.
they're doing. Can I ask Aaron, can you get a little more detail on that Wells Fargo building lot and everything?
Yes,
Maybe that has another purpose for us. I'd just like to know what it,
Mm.
nope, I can forward the information
Okay.
on.
City of Goodview has been talking with them as well about it. Yeah, that's interesting too.
is it close enough to the river?
No,
Can you get to the river
it's
from
by,
there?
it's by the old.
I know. It's a straight shot to the backwaters of the river, isn't it?
All right, I think we have a motion on the table by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the recommendation to enter into a lease agreement pending approval to form as the county attorney's office, correct?
I already didn't get in there.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. All right, next, item 7.4, receive update and approve recommendations for use of opioid settlement fund.
Thank you.
Is this you, Ms. Holte, or is this Ms. Sonneman?
Actually, I think we can team it.
Right.
So the internal opioid settlement committee has been meeting since March of 2023. We offered some listening sessions in the community and contracted with Carol Ackley to provide education and training for students and families as well as community members. After much discussion, we have some recommendations to go over with the board. And so the committee felt that it would be good for us to focus on 3 pillars, and that's the prevention, stabilization, and recovery. We came up with some high-level topics or items that we could work on in each of those pillars. What we're asking is for the board to approve the direction that we have laid out, and we would bring back specifics with measurables. Commissioner Meyer, you're on the committee, and Attorney Sonneman, actually Commissioner Ward, you as well. Any additional items to offer?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Martin?
Yeah, I support the presentation, what we have presented here. We have gone through an awful lot of conversations and looked at and rejected a number of ideas. So the idea is really to work with programs or organizations that exist to try and enhance what it is they're doing. Because in many cases, to do a thing from scratch, takes, we have about 180,000 a year. So we wanted it to really go as far as we could. So there's a lot of great work that's being done by organizations in the community. And so what we're looking at is trying to expand what that work is, make it more accessible, help it to reach more people. And so I am in support of what's going on, and I do want to see it come back with measurable specifics. So I support the plan that administration has presented.
Any other comments?
Not a lot of money, but we're trying to use it wisely.
Yep. So we would need a recommendation to approve. So moved.
I will second.
Any other discussions? Sonneman, is that?
It's, yeah, I mean, everything that Administrator Holte.
Is summarized.
Yeah, it was a good committee sorry, it's late and I'm tired. But there was great representation from all aspects. The Veterans Office was there. We had Health and Human Services. I represented at various times, RAP, treatment court, well, and really the criminal justice aspect, but also the fact that we have these existing programs, we have these existing public and nonprofit partnerships that we can, work on and continue to enhance.
Thank you.
And work with the schools too. That was a
Absolutely.
big one.
Sheriff Gander, does that,
Yeah, that's
you're
right.
also on the
Sheriff
committee
Gann
too,
was
correct?
on there too.
I think we're all set. I'm sorry, Commissioner Ward.
Well, I think some of what we discussed and some of these things may tie into that meeting we have tomorrow night with the city and mental health and stuff, and how we attack the societal problem of opioids, and it ties into mental health and everything else that we're working on. So we'll see where that takes us.
All in favor, any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. That takes us to 7.5, approve 2023 restricted and assigned reserves.
So in the packet, you'll see the 2023 document that reflects the restricted and assigned amounts. There was an inquiry to clarify what the debt service amount was on the page 117. So it's got an asterisk with the A. So the debt service you'll see down below reflects that it's taking the 2020 A bond, the 2021 and 2022. And those are the amounts which equal the 95,677.
Oh, hold on, you're ahead of me. Was there some
Page 117.
117?
Mm-hmm.
I copied off the sheets that I had from the previous meeting.
So that number, 95,677, say that, what that is again?
So down below on the sheet, if you look further down, there's an asterisk with an A.
Yep.
So that number of the 95,000 reflects the 2020 A bond, the 2021 bond, and the 2022 bond. So collectively, that's what the budget holds for those bonds.
Oh, okay, that's not on the original. All right.
So there was a request to break it down.
Yep.
What does it mean? Commissioner Ward, do you see it?
Yeah, now I see it on, yes, I copied off last meeting's papers. Okay.
And then down below, there was an inquiry on what does the agency funds? So if you go just a few down on that same page, and then look all the way to the bottom of the page, there's an asterisk with a B.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Goodness. And so I listed all of the funds that are collective that dollar amount. And if you look at these are all things that basically are other funds that we have to maintain, but to list them on a regular basis on the sheet here really isn't going to add value because they're funds that the board really doesn't take action on.
But what's Fund 81, 82, 83, 87, 70, what are those numbers? Where do I find what those numbers mean?
Yep, so Fund 81 is the settlement fund, so that's where we put taxes in, hold until we distribute.
Okay. And maybe you can just send out a memo what those
Oh,
numbers
so
were.
clarify those for you?
Yeah, what those numbers are.
Okay.
One of the big questions that comes out at me is now again, I should look at what was in the current packet. I apologize.
It's the same, isn't it?
We have total operating unrestricted on the first page, and we have like 18,349,410. But our 3/12 operating expenditures should only be 12,500,000. So why and I appreciate this was Pat Moga's, findings, and I don't know that you have all the answers. But why do we have like a $6 million discrepancy there?
So again, I don't have all of the answers. I'd have to go back and
Yeah.
really
But
research.
do you see what I'm
his math.
looking at? It looks like we got 18 and we only need 12. So did we collect more? And then, okay, so if I can, I'll just go down and I understand and I appreciate, and I sent you notes late in the day, this afternoon. The recycling, and I'm not sure why we're carrying over $500,000 in reserves or balance there. I mean, shouldn't that kind of take care of itself? And we get score funds, or is that the blue bins, or what? Why would we have reserves of $500,000 sitting in recycling? I don't understand why we would have that. Let's see. Jail expenses. Now that's a fund. Now that's at a negative 175. Sheriff, why are you almost $500,000 over in expenses? I don't understand that one. Let's see, you did the agency, the coronavirus. Is that what the report was earlier? Is that the 1.2 million
Yes.
still out there? Okay. And then, of course, the sheriff wants to spend more money on something, but I also look at and they are restricted, but Sheriff DW, on the second page then, Sheriff DWI forfeitures, we've got like 14,000 there. I'm not sure what we can use that for. And gun permits, we've got 149,835 and restricted. Can't we use that to buy, do we buy more guns or can we buy these body cams and such? I mean, there's a lot of money in some of these things. Now, of course, the others are restricted. I mean, they're 9/1 restorative, tobacco settlement, opioid settlement and such. But a couple of those things, they seem to be, they're forfeitures or permits. And I guess,
Those are restricted. You can't.
but what can
The
they,
board cannot
but what,
make a decision how to spend those.
right,
It should
but
be
what
in mind.
what can they be used to spend for? Like, again, he wants more, and I think we got money, but they wanted more body cams. So to me, that's sheriff stuff. It should be able to be spent for sheriff stuff. Again,
That's at the discretion of the sheriff.
yeah. So I mean,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
So to help clarify, because one of the items, Commissioner Ward, you asked was on the gun permits.
Yeah.
Okay, so the asterisk again reflects down on the bottom here.
Okay,
where
I didn't look at the.
Quoted.
I apologize. I did not look at,
says.
I looked at my old paper. Thank you. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
And so it says specifically there, must be used only to pay the direct cost of administering this section. So
Okay. So let me read that and then
these
maybe I have less questions.
Specifics, how you can use the money.
Right. And then Ms. Wilbright's gone. I hope that all these funds are being invested so that we're making money on them. Investments are very critical in this day and age. I mean, there's a lot of money sitting there that I hope we're earning interest on. I mean, and I'm not sure I don't know, again, should it be a county board policy decision or is it an auditor treasurer policy decision? Or who's has, the power to say, well, invest this and come up with a investment ladder and things like that, because there's too much money there not to be making interest on it.
If I may, I believe the county has their financial policies which determine that the auditor treasurer does the investing. But most certainly you can revisit policy if you so choose.
Did you want more time to read something you said?
Well, I'll look at it and then I can get back. I apologize. I didn't
No worries.
realize these additional
A
notes.
little bit more
A
time.
little more time? Well, I get the agenda late on Thursday, so again, my weekends are precious too. Okay, but I can read those. I apologize. I didn't realize those notes were there.
So we would need a motion to,
I will move to approve the 2023 restricted and assigned reserves as reported in the packet.
motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. That takes us to item 7.6, receive monthly finance and budget update for December of 2023.
Okay. Well, I know that Mr. Mulder would usually read this to you.
Yes.
Do you desire me to read it to you?
Oh, no, but I would like to interject if I
Please,
could here,
Commissioner Ward.
is that I know this was intended to be useful, but I don't know if it's as useful as it could be. And I do have to put out there at some point again that I really think like with all the projects we're trying to build and the numbers that we're being fed and the finances and the way county financing and accounting is, I need to advocate for, some type of finance committee with some outside, bankers or lending people, again, just to give us more perspective of how things might work. And so at some point in time, I think I would like to pursue that, but right now we'll work through this.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I am working on other avenues of how we can communicate this information. But plate's been a little bit full, but
Yep.
we
Yes.
will get you some other templates to consider for
Okay.
Thank
the
you.
data.
Commissioner Meyer.
Sure. Yeah, the one thing I would say that is always useful, I know that before I was elected, there was a time when HHS was skyrocketing. It had to do with child protective services and out-of-home placements. So it's always good to see if there are trends and that's happening. And this does achieve that, but it isn't that not everything on here is useful, but those pieces of information are helpful. if we think that we are having some kind of an issue. And that I certainly would want to be made aware of.
Commissioner Ward?
But with that said, it being such a large catch-all category, more detail would be beneficial to see what programs are working or not working. And you're right. And then if you go prior to your being on, that used to be quite a moneymaker, Health and Human Services at one point in time.
And then it wasn't?
Yeah, and then it wasn't. So, I mean, things have changed. But again, I think they're all such large categories to see the trend, yeah, could maybe be presented in a more broken down manner.
And this is just to receive an update, so no
Right.
motion
action.
necessary, right?
No.
Is there any further discussion on this? All right, then that would move us on to what had previously been 6.3, right? That's on page 28, I believe.
36.
Thank you.
And I asked to pull this. I remember this being created back in, I think, 2020. And Olmsted County got a big
Yes.
legislative to build. But now, I guess I'm a little concerned about the, of course, now this year, 21, 22, we had to pay them 41,000. And did we have a budget line item, or is that just coming? I was unclear if we had a current budget line item or if that's just coming out of our reserves. And then it was unclear as to what 22, 23 will be. And again, I guess, again, I like breakdown. What was the 41,000 for? What are we paying for? I know it's services, but like, what kind of services? And is it realistic? And then there is, it talks about a board, and I don't know that anybody, at least there's no commissioners on this quote board. And I think that's pretty critical with, the kind of budgetary requirements it may. So I guess maybe a little more information on this whole organization. I trust Olmsted County, but only so much.
Could we approve it and then ask for follow-up answers to those questions?
Well, and maybe some type of presentation from somebody to say where is this going? And the big thing is the board and the makeup, the executive board that they refer to quite a bit in the document. I don't know that we've ever made any decisions and maybe Ms. Holte knows.
So I tried to give a description in the RFBA on how it was established.
Right. Yep.
And the CERC governance agreement, which lays out how it's paid for.
Yep.
The program wasn't intended to not be self-sufficient. They didn't have the proper billing mechanisms in place when they first started.
Yep.
So that's why there is a deficit for 21, 22, and 23. The 41,000 covers 21 and 22. We don't have an amount for 2023 yet. We're waiting to get their books. Okay, so we are not anticipating to have to contribute anything in 2024. And so this all is part of that the county, through the CREST group, the directors, the Health and Human Services directors, agreed to take part of the Adult Mental Health Initiative funds, the grant, and contribute to this program. In addition to all of the other billing mechanisms and other grants, it would pay for the services to run the CERC program. Okay, so it wasn't intended to cost additional money other than what each entity was putting in. And the ones that are contributing the most is Olmsted and Mayo.
Yeah.
Mayo is actually covering a large majority of it.
1.5 million.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
but is that a long-term agreement? Is that?
well, this is coming back before the board, and I noted that in here that the 2024 agreement is forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing is we're building in the safeguards to ensure that entities are not going to be in a position of having to pay out of levy or reserves. So to answer your question, Commissioner Ward, this will come out of the budget, best way we can to cover it. Otherwise, it would be reserves.
But the goal is that it shouldn't in moving forward.
Correct.
It's a lofty wish, and I hope we can follow through with it.
This group meets regularly. I mean, insanely a lot. And bless them. I mean, they're very knowledgeable people. But they are working very hard to make sure that we have the proper billing mechanisms and we have the right people in the right seats of the bus to make it happen. And that's why it's taking us a while to get the new agreement through council and through all of the county boards. We're working very hard to make sure we don't put anybody in that position moving forward.
Commissioner Ward.
But the executive board, is that the Health and Human Service directors?
The CREST directors.
Okay, it's no elected.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I have a problem with that.
It's been that way. I mean, I provided the contract. What year was that? 2019?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's something that has been in place. I'm not saying right, wrong, or indifferent, but this group, and with all due respect, Commissioner Ward, I really find it, I don't know how a county board member would be able to grasp the amount of detailed information that they cover at those meetings. The Health and Human Services directors have a very complex job. And to know the intricacies of how to bill something, when to bill it, what agencies to involve, it is very complex, with all due respect. This is something you need to let the experts do. I hear you.
I have difficulty
I
with it.
respect that.
I carry this little thing that Mark Twain, I have it pasted right in my notebook here. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. I'm sorry, and I'm not asking you to explain it, but there was an executive board. And I guess when I remember originally going into this, because Olmsted County was going to get the money to build the facility and everything. And like I say, I trust Olmsted County considerably and everything, but there's a lot of money here and a lot of dollars, and it's being controlled by employees, not the electeds. Even at the state level and such, are there electeds on this that control these budgets and everything? I don't know.
This is,
Anytime you give anybody a big chunk of money, you better be cognizant of what's happening.
this is largely paid for by grants, the adult mental health funds. This isn't coming out of taxpayers' money. Well,
It's grants.
I'll take that back.
Bite your tongue.
My point being is we're not going to the counties asking for levy.
Well, we just did with the 41,000.
I already explained that.
Okay,
Commissioner
all
Moore.
right. So I'll follow up with Olmsted County and some of my colleagues over there and see if they're comfortable with it.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Meyer had a hand up.
Oh.
Well,
Go ahead. I'll second it. Okay.
a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Further discussion,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that one of the biggest items that came forward when we did our local assessment of, what was it called? The county attorney's on the SIM, right? The sequential intercept mapping, right? What was the biggest mental health need is that we no longer had a facility for crisis intervention right here in town. This is regional. I'd wish it was here and not in Olmsted County, but it is the thing that fills that gap. So this is essential for us to have. You know, it was created by the legislature and they surely are elected. So I'll say that much. The other thing is that I appreciate all the additional information and knowing that it shouldn't have a $40,000 price tag every year going forward. So I appreciate finding that information out. But in your description, what you tell us is that 86 Winona County clients have received services. And at $41,000, that's less than $500 a piece.
a single therapy session now costs $200 an hour. So that's a pretty minimal price to pay for what it provides to us for our community. So I don't have any problem making this payment. And I appreciate your efforts in terms of working towards making sure that the reimbursements we get from the state will pay to cover the cost of the facility. But this facility is definitely needed in our region.
Commissioner Warren? I'm sorry.
So this is, yeah, so this is a building they built. So Winona County people are physically having to go to Rochester to obtain services. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, unless you want to build one here, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, yeah, so, okay, so my point is that we send people with mental health capabilities to Rochester, but we won't send people to get their driver's license out of town.
It's much more.
And I don't deny that it's a needed program and everything.
Oh, and I'd much rather have it here, just like the
Right, but
driver's
we're not going
license
to get
center.
that kind of money. I mean, Olmsted County and such, and I don't know, again, is there certain, some of those things, there were certain number of beds, but that's not in this agreement where we're paying for spots to hold or anything. Okay.
Ms. Sonneman?
Just want to say two things. One, the agreement references 245.465, which is the duties of the county board to use these mental health funds. And that you will, it says shall, not may, shall use its share of mental health funds allocated by the commissioner, meaning the commissioner of Human Services, I believe, or Health, according to the mental health plan approved by the commissioner. And then there's a whole bunch of musts. So you're really kind of tied to this, but it's also meeting the requirements of the plan. And I know I just reviewed something going to come down the agenda pipe about that.
The collaborative?
The collaborative, yeah, which also references the 245 section about the county's obligations for meeting mental health plans, both for adults and juveniles, actually. So, yeah. So it's written into statute and it's, you're carrying out, just like the county is delegated certain duties by the Commissioner of Health and the Commissioner of Human Services. And I'll just remind you every once in a while, counties are creatures of the state.
Yeah.
So they do not have independent authority.
But it is our right to question.
Oh, yes,
Absolutely.
of course. And
hold them accountable.
yes, I
try.
agree with that. Yes. Yep.
Are we ready to vote? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next item was formerly 6.5, approve purchase of additional body worn cameras.
It's passed.
Yep.
Okay, my question there was, and I think the sheriff wants to buy more body cams, and a question was, somewhere I read that a portion, but I think all the funding's coming out of that pot of money we got from the state. So there's no additional property tax going into it. The question I have is that, how many you replace at any one time? You need this many? Because I like to keep a reserve because, things break and the new ones you get shining out of the box always work better than the ones that have been sitting on the shelf. So I just question that how many we need, and if you feel we need all these.
So when we started the program, we were the first in this southeastern Minnesota to have body cameras. And we started with just the deputies and the shift commanders in the jail. We want to expand that because the program is working. We want each of the staff assigned to a shift in the jail now to have them, and then have an extra in case somebody's battery didn't get charged or whatever. So this 16 isn't replacing any. It's making sure every staff member on duty would have a body camera.
Okay, and that will be covered, I think, in the dollar amount that was left from the
Yeah,
spending on the laptop.
when Chief Deputy Mueller priced out the computers,
Right.
they overquoted us, and now with the ones that he's ordering, there was money left over. So we're asking for these body cams to be paid with that money that was allocated for something else that we don't need now.
it's unfortunate. There was, MCIT had a small grant program. We could have maybe applied and got some money from MCIT, but I don't know. We may renew that, grant opportunity, but we can watch for that and stuff.
Yes.
Because it is, I appreciate the body cams. It's a risk management tool that MCIT has sought that it has value. So thank
Ms.
you.
Sonneman?
I just can't let this moment go, but I support incredibly the work of the sheriff's department and all law enforcement because body cameras make you safer. It provides better evidence, but it's increased our work at my office incredibly, and we haven't gotten any additional funding to review those. We now actually have an intern reviewing body cameras footage. So it'd be nice if MCIT had some money
For that.
Attorney's office.
I don't know that I'll see the attorney getting money, but I do put money to
Well, I
jails.
mean,
and
when you have,
sheriffs.
this is just an example of, you introduce new technology. It's like with the phones. I mean, we now have to investigate, and sheriff's office as well. I mean, that they have to investigate the phones, the computers, and we need experts to do that. But body cameras are great, but there's a spillover effect, and it's put a lot of work into our office that we didn't have 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, so anyways, I just couldn't let that go. Sorry,
important
it's
point.
late.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I move to approve the purchase of the body worn cameras for the detention center operations.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Olson. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Sheriff, I apologize. I should have moved this up sooner. I just realized how long you stayed here. I apologize.
Thank
Not a problem.
All right.
Thank you.
Your salary.
Yeah.
Salary.
I'm sorry.
Full driving? No.
Commissioner Ward, I think you had a comment?
Yeah, just, I asked, copies, were made and put at your place. One of my friends in Anoka County, this actually, this page goes out in their tax statements, which are currently going out. And I think it's a valuable tool. I don't know if we could come up with something like it, but it does break down. I love the dollar in the lower right-hand corner. You know, it breaks out for every dollar where the money's come from and everything. But I think it does show up in their property tax statement. It also on the backside shows, you know, by the numbers, the roads, the bridges, the calls, all those things. So I don't know, at some point in time, you know, if we could, I know they'd let us copy it if we could just put our numbers in it. I know they'd let us, I'm sure I could get permission to copy it. But I think it's a valuable tool for our constituents to understand what we do.
It goes to your Mark Twain.
Yes.
It helps. I remember a long time ago, there was a Winona City Council member, Dieter Milamanka, and he
Yeah.
had his Dieter chart
Charts.
in where he tried to like take all the jargon and all the acronyms and turn it in. Yeah, this is a great idea.
Yeah.
This is a
So,
great idea.
so maybe at some point we can,
Yes, all right.
what's that? No, we'll just,
Already just said.
I'll just get some white out and change the numbers on it. You know, I think they'll let me do that.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'll add one thing in Commissioner Ward already mentioned it, but I think just a reminder, tomorrow at 4:30 at City Hall, the second of the joint Winona City Council and County Board meeting, listening on the next presentation by the Winona County Mental Health Collaborative, correct? Looking forward to that tomorrow. So 4:30 at City Hall. Is there anything else? We go to the bye?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Meeting adjourned.